It is 5:30, so I am going to call the regular meeting of Council April 27th to order. We do have the agenda ahead of us. The City of Lacombe acknowledges that we live, work, and govern on the shared territory of Treaty 6. We honor the histories, languages, cultures, and continuing contributions of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and other First Nations, as well as the Métis people of the Battle River Territory and beyond. We affirm our ongoing relationship with this land and commit to the respectful and meaningful engagement with Indigenous peoples as partners in our community. So the first item we have is the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be removed? Does not appear to be. Does someone wish to make that motion to accept the consent agenda as presented? Councillor Goings.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
I will call the question. Please vote. And that is carried unanimously. That moves us then to the adoption of the regular agenda. Are there any additions, omissions? Seeing none, if someone would like to make a motion to adopt the regular agenda as presented. Councillor Proud.
I move that we accept the regular agenda as presented.
I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. That does move us then directly into presentations. We have 3 this evening. First up for presentations is the Lacombe Police Service. I would invite Chair Mr. Christie and Chief Doberstein to take the presenters table. I know you both have long experience in these chambers, so you know how to turn the microphone on. Not much explanation required. So I would then give you the floor to make your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. And on behalf of the Lacombe Police Commission, we thank you for accepting us this evening, and through you to the rest of council. I would like to introduce, everybody probably knows, Chief Doberstein. We have Vice Chair Cam Penstone with us this evening. And we also have a new member from the commission. Al Sebring is here this evening. Thank you, and welcome to Mayor Hibbs as a new member of our commission.
Thank you.
There's a former commission member here that served 9 years, and we also want to say thank you to Councillor Dykeslag for her service on the Police Commission as well. So we're here to announce the publication of the 2025 Lacombe Police Service Annual Report. Some of the highlights from the report, we had a changing of the guard, or a changing of the chief per se, and we welcomed Chief Doberstein mid-year this year. And I believe there's a song that says every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And with that being said, we saw the retirement of Chief Blumhagen, and I was here for his beginning, and I certainly hope that I'm not here for your end. We also celebrated 125 years of the Lacombe Police Service, which is a big milestone, I believe, in not only Alberta, but across Canada for police stations and our police services. And I believe in 1900, the police service was also the fire department, if I remember my history correctly. So, oh, you were there? No, I was here in 1902. So with that, we do have, those are some highlights that we had. It was 2026 when we changed chairs. Former Chair Gish, at our operational meeting, I was elected as the chair in early 2026. But the report does highlight a number of great things that have been happening. We have the operational highlights, we have the general crime stats, the provincial policing priorities, commitment to present and future well-being of the service. There's some community involvement and also some victim services information in there as well. And I know that you have it before you. And we are here this evening to accept any questions or any comments that you or council may have. Would you like to add?
Yeah, simply, I really appreciate the city support. Marina Appel, if that's how it's said, in particular, there was a lot of work from many hands across the police service to bring this together, and she brought our vision together, and I think it looks very professional. I appreciate it, support.
Are there any questions? One of the things that I would just like to ask is very well done report for sure. And I love all the details and I like the charts. Just wanted to ask about, you know, you've made it, a complaint is made, you follow up on it, you might decide to press charges, those may be supported, they go to court. So there's a whole length of process, and obviously everything that's called in doesn't make it that whole way. Could you just sort of explain what that kind of looks like in our community? You know, how many calls actually result in charges that are then followed through by the court system, and then ideally, you know, with penalty if they're found to be guilty. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That's a very big, very complicated question.
I think there's a couple in there.
Yeah. I can't give you exactly how all of those are resolved. That is not something generally that's tracked. That would take a great deal of work in terms of tracking the convictions in court, how many charges. We do have those stats, but in terms of the end result, we don't often follow those. One thing we will be doing moving forward is what's missing from this report is really a better numbers, a clearance rate or weighted clearance rate. And those are very closely attached to crime severity. So depending on the seriousness of the call, there's value in tracking the outcome of those, whether the police investigate and the resulted findings of those. One of the challenges in Macomb is with the size of the police service, many of us are doing things off the corner of our desk. And really, it took us up until 2 months ago, even with commission, just to get the stats to a point where we felt comfortable that those are the most accurate. A lot of organizations have civilian staff that support the police officers when it comes to uniform crime reporting and properly tracking all those things that you talk about, and then the outcome of all those files. In a smaller organization, traditionally here, that has been done by the police officers. Not always exactly the same, many different people doing it slightly different. And so we're trying to get that on track. One of the other things is because we don't have an analyst, much of that, like weighted clearance rates and data like that, comes from people who are professionally trained to do that. We don't have that in Lacombe. So we're looking at a method to try and figure that out. We're sending somebody away from training, hopefully this fall, that will come back with that skill set. If we can find the right person internally. Our Guns and Gangs funding talks about crime, data-driven, intelligence-led policing. We'll be able to fund that out of that grant money if we can find the right person internally, and then that'll be the next step in terms of getting better data in terms of clearance rates, how the outcomes of our files that would come in.
Sure, I appreciate that, just because that is feedback that I do receive from the public at time to time, is they feel like they call in and then there's no like outcome. So whether maybe charges weren't laid or maybe they were, but they didn't, you know, take. So that's just something I'm just passing on as far as what I hear in the community. Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Thanks for the presentation, and the report is very well done. One of the things that I noted in there was the how encouraging it is to see the distribution of experience levels. The members with 2 to 4 years of experience are almost equal to the members with 10 to 19 years. So I think it's really important that the new officers are learning from such a seasoned leadership.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Dykes-Dyke.
I also just want to express my appreciation for the detailed report. I've been seeing these reports for a number of years, and this one is exceptional and has lots of new data that we haven't seen in the past, which is appreciated. I also just want to express that Lacombe makes a choice to have a Lacombe Police Service, and it's a choice our taxpayers make, and it's a choice I've supported in my campaign and in this seat that I sit in today. And I believe it contributes greatly to the well-being of our citizens, the physical and psychological safety that we feel that we live in when we live in this community. So appreciation to that. And I strongly continue to support the service and the work that the members are doing, both civilian and non-civilian. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Proud.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Just a question in regards to speeding in the city. I get this a lot when I'm talking to people, and at the trade fair, I had a few people asking me about speed limits downtown, particularly around the LMC. A couple lives quite close there, and they recognize like quite a lot of traffic back and forth throughout the LMC and around the area, blowing stop signs, etc., that kind of thing. Are we looking at potentially a reduction in the speed limit, or what would be your position on that?
Generally, the police try to stay out of that because we're the ones that might be enforcing the laws. Certainly, many communities have reduced, and we already have that core that is reduced speed. And it's just been our job to be part of enforcing it and being out there, so we're seeing invisibles.
I guess the question is to the enforcement side of things, and I too live in an area of town where it's the Indy 500 after they hit the roundabout. And I know there's only so many to go around, but I'm just wondering about the enforcement of speeding in the city. Like, where are we at with that? Are there a lot of tickets given for that, or?
Not, we do traffic enforcement. That's as part of our job, certainly. As an example, after our community engagement at the Chamber Trade Fair, there was 3 particular items in the areas in the community that we're looking for some enforcement. And even this morning, the teams were out in all those areas. I've asked them to track the time they spend in those areas and let me know the enforcement. This morning, there was actually one vehicle that was stopped in the school zone at 89 kilometers an hour, if you can imagine. So that's on their way to mandatory court, likely to lose their license. So when the officers are available, they're out doing enforcement.
Councillor Span.
Through Mayor Hibbs to Chief Doberstein and Chair Christie, I want to echo what Councillor Goings and Dykeslag have said to you about the well put together presentation. Very much appreciated. The question I have is in regards to the next few years. Are there some challenges that you foresee that we could have on our mind, and what would those challenges be?
As it sits right now, when we look at our officer to population as an example, I did bring copies for everybody. I can share too. When we look at our police officers for population based on our present population model, Taber, oftentimes the cop to population is based on a population per officers per 100,000. So in Taber, they have 196 per 100,000 or 508 population per officer. Camrose has 149 per 100,000 or 671 per population. Lacombe is at 169 per 100,000 at a population per officer of 589. Lethbridge is at 165 per 100,000, a population of 604 per officer. Medicine Hat is at 164, 608 per officer. The national average is 178 officers per 100,000 population. So in Alberta, really our closest comparators, we're literally right in the middle. And nationally, we're slightly lower. But I would say this, unless I would see a significant either increase in crime problem or population increase, I don't see that we would need more police officers in the near future and maybe in my tenure. Where we are challenged a bit as a police service is more in the civilian support staff side, as an example, in the category of an analyst, or some of our administrative duties are, there are many people with many tasks on many corners of their desk, and they're certainly probably the ones at more capacity. I think our police officers we can manage. So in the future, I would think it's probably civilian support.
I think to add to that a little bit too, with regards to, I think we are authorized for 25 sworn officers. We currently are at 24 with one at school, I believe. So we're at full complement here by mid-year, we will be. I think challenges is keeping up with crime, keeping up with things like AI, keeping up with cyber crime, all the different sources, all the different things that Lacombe Police Service has to be involved with, has to deal with on a daily basis. And I once sat in a chair right in front of me here that I was very proud that a lot of the citizens of Lacombe don't really know or don't really see what happens in our city on a daily basis. And I don't think they do to this day, which makes me believe that our Lacombe Police Service is doing a great job for the city of Lacombe. And I know they can want to continue to, but keeping up with different types of crime, I think is going to be a challenge in the years to come.
Councillor Contenti.
Thank you, Mayor Hips, to presenters. Thank you for the report. It's visual. I'm a visual person. I like it. Just want to encourage you that the reporting of the crimes, even though some may seem like very minute, when I was campaigning, some questions were like, a few years back, there didn't seem to be any crime in Lacombe. Not much was reported. Since we've had a change, that's increased, so it's very open now, and people can see, yes, we have crime in Lacombe. Thus, we need to keep supporting our police, and they're doing their best job they can. Just further on the different types of crimes now that are coming. So I just encourage you to keep that reporting up so that our citizens can actually see what you're doing out there and the difference you are making. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just have one final comment, I guess, just further to what Councillor Dyke brought up, that obviously Lacombe taxpayers make a choice to have a department, as we do. But I do think that that's reflected in our crime severity index. And I would really like to highlight that section because people say that they are quite often willing to pay that bill because they get a safe community out of that. And that's borne out by the statistics. But I would like it if you would just verbally just talk about the crime severity index a little bit, just because, you know, this is a meeting that is being recorded. People may watch it after. They may not read the whole report, but I think that this is something that is relevant as a reflection on our community and as a reflection on the police service. So if you wouldn't mind just covering sort of that area.
So that is a stat that we don't create. Statistics Canada does that work. And those are, depending on this type of offense, there's a certain weight that'll come with it. So as an example, if a murder were to occur, there's many points that are attached to that. If someone steals some change from your car, that is worth less points. And so if your crime severity in your community is lower, it would suggest there is less violent crime, less crimes that people would go to jail for a long period of time. So ultimately, as long as our community keeps on the path they're on, that's the number we should see. It doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have enough calls for service to manage, and many calls that come in, they just are a lower number and score in terms of the higher priorities. The challenge in some communities will be if you have somebody that gets murdered, 1, 2, or 3 people, that will significantly change everything for you. And all of a sudden you're in the top 5 most violent cities in the country. It just depends on what happens.
I think a community can gain a reputation for being a safe haven for misdeeds as well, which I should think that Lacombe does not have and will continue to not have as long as we have an active police force that's out there patrolling, making traffic stops, and doing the work that we're expecting as a community. So I just wanted to just give that out as really a shout out to the service because they're part of that for sure. I don't see any additional questions, so unless you've got any final remarks that you wish to impart.
Absolutely. In conclusion, I just want to say thank you for the support, and on behalf of the commission, we are more than aware that it is a choice for citizens of Lacombe to have their own Lacombe Police Service. And we are also aware that it is a big piece of this council's budget. And we have very competent group around the table that take our budget very seriously, the budget that we present to you for approval very seriously. And if you see it in your hearts, and it would be no further cost to possibly add a member or two from at-large members, I think it would be great. It's gotten a little skinny over the last few months, and it doesn't hurt to have a couple more, expand the matrix, I guess, of the commission to garner a few more professionals around the table. It wouldn't hurt, but we have very competent people around there. We're very aware that we're a big part of your budget, a big chunk of your budget, and we will do our best to use it properly.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for the comments.
Very
Thank
good.
you for
Thank
your
you.
support.
Our next presentation is the CIBC Hobson Chahal Advisory Group regarding city investments. I would invite Mr. Chart and Mr. Hobson to the table as presenters. You also have been here before and know how to operate the microphone, so just press the button. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you again for having us back. It's good to be back in the city of Lacombe. Many of you know us, and we're back every year, but my name's James Hobson, joined with my colleague here, Chart Chahal. Together, we represent the Hobson Chahal Advisory Group at CIBC Wood Gundy. Together, we manage about 90 municipal accounts, mostly in Alberta, and we currently run the long-term investment reserve for the city of Lacombe. So we're gonna walk you through some of the key themes that we're seeing in the economic environment right now. Obviously, there's a lot going on. So we want to just distill it into kind of the key themes that we think are relevant for the city. And then I'm going to walk you through the current kind of portfolio, how it's performed. Spoiler alert, it's done very well. So I'm going to turn it to Chart and he'll walk you through the economics.
Thank you very much, James. So looking ahead is a fun one for us right now. I think we come here every year saying we expect 1 year of normal, and you just never get 1 year of normal anymore. And lo and behold, that's what the environment we're looking at right now. Right now, there's supposed to be a consumer in the middle of this, but we'll go with an empty void. Also a good analogy, I guess, of the current world. The world we're living in right now, as an average consumer, we're used to like one or two things that kind of stress us out on a daily basis. And it just seems to be compounding in the current environment. We have the tariff environment and the tariff war that we've gotten into over the last year. You have now geopolitical tensions rising across the world. How is that going to affect us? Artificial intelligence, what is that going to play for us? Consumer labor, how's that affect the labor force? Interest rates, that's very important for the city of Lacombe because that is the predominant amount. That is your guys' investment portfolio. We're not allowed to take risk with your guys' portfolio. So it's largely subject to what the interest rate environment looks like. Supply chain disruptions, we have a counterpart south of the border that's locally focusing on deglobalization, while the rest of the world is focused on globalization. So kind of what does that look like for the consumers? So kind of starting off with two-pronged is on south of the border is the tariff and AI factor. A lot of the data and the noise out there kind of points to, hey, like the USA right now has been sitting there going, hey, we increased tariffs across the board, and look, we haven't seen the impact that the world has said there was going to be an impact to in terms of our GDP, look, our growth has been going really good. Sure, yes, the top bottom line number has been okay, but if you look at the components of what's affecting GDP, tariffs have actually been a negative detracting factor. It's just the AI boom that we've just experienced has been offsetting that tariff negative detractors. So you have the positive forces coming from AI, negative carbon forces coming from tariffs. Looking ahead, we're starting to enter that phase where there's just only so many data centers that the USA can build. And the impact of that, I'm not going to get into the impact on that on cost of the consumer in terms of inflation and energy, but that's going to have less and less of an impact going forward. So the impact that we thought we were going to get from tariffs last year, the forecast right now, economists love to say holding things constant in a world where nothing is constant, but holding a lot of forecasts constant right now, we think that tariffs are going to start to play more of a factor going into this year, especially in a year where the biggest concern for Canada, or that's from a geopolitical environment, is more the renegotiation of CUSMA. I still say NAFTA, it's a habit, whatever you want to call it. The renegotiation of the tariff war right now, that's the biggest thing that we're kind of focusing on going forward. So tariffs are still going to play a factor. Don't let last year assume that they didn't. It's just the AI growth is going to offset that aspect. And then on this side of the border, we've seen the direct impact. So sectors that were exposed to tariffs have been understandably underperforming. This is not Alberta. This is manufacturing, steel, aluminum, all the sectors that they've been targeting south of the border. It wasn't a delay. If you look at right around March, April, when the tariff war kicked off, those sectors got beat up right away. I used to have a slide, I took it off. What I can tell you is the manufacturing sectors, the BC, Ontario, Quebec, all those steel lumber sectors, they've been hurting before the tariff war, and all this did was exacerbate a problem. What I can tell you is it's now forced the rest of the province to go, hey, we do need to diversify our export base. We can't just have one customer and then get shocked when our one customer holds our hand to the fire. We are starting to diversify. If you look at our export base right now, we've seen the market try and find new routes. We look at a lot of European or a lot of our exports that declined from the US got demand. That demand was filled in the US, in Europe, and in China. So overall, they have been understandably performing. This is also why when we show you the rate forecast where we don't think rates are rising yet in Canada, there's still a lot of pain in Canada to kind of navigate into this next year, a lot of uncertainty in this next year, barring geopolitical environments that we've kind of hit in this world right now. Now, this leads me to my provincial forecast. We put together forecasts before the geopolitical uncertainty, and then I'll have the next slide there. So the reality of before geopolitical tensions, Alberta was going to lead the pack across all of our peers. I mean, we're showing like 2% growth, and I'm saying leading the pack. I'm an internal optimist, but it is still leading the pack in terms of all of our peers. And the reason being is we're just not going to be hit as hard as what the Trump presidency has been targeting, right? So you have Quebec with its aluminum, Ontario with autos and steel, BC, New Brunswick with the lumber tariffs. Oil and commodities are just not something he's focusing on. It's not a focus of theirs. They need, especially in today's environment, they need our resources. So it's not a focus of them moving forward. The positive takeaway is, and again, prior to geopolitical tensions, is the Supreme Court striking down the reciprocal tariffs, fentanyl tariff, whatever crisis tariff we want to call that. It reduces the importance and the reliance of having to have a trade deal because now there's no legal precedent for them to start doing these tariffs. Again, they can come up with a lot of loopholes going forward. But again, for Alberta, we're really well positioned relative to all of our peers. That was my speech before the start of March. And then we had March. This kind of gives you context to what we've experienced in the commodity market. I put a little star there to show you the day the Alberta budget released. Oil was trading at $65.21. The budget had an average of $60.50 in there. The next day is when we saw oil spike. To give everybody a context, every $1 move is a $680 million swing to the provincial budget. We're what, $30 now, so that's a $20 billion swing to the provincial budget if crude stays where it's going to be. The question is, where does it go from here? Very hard to predict. I can tell you that a lot of people smarter than myself, if you look at the futures market for crude, they're kind of predicting, okay, once this settles, $74, $80 is where this kind of going to shake out. I like 74 and 80 for two reasons. One, even if this geopolitical tension and this war stops tomorrow, there's been critical infrastructure damage across the sea that you can't just turn on. It's gonna take a lot of time to rebuild that. And two, there's just a massive risk premium for that crude. These refineries like stability. They'll pay a premium for stable crude versus just a big discount. So the risk premium is going to be there. And three, the break even, just for context, for the provincial budget, it's around $74. So where the market's pricing it and where provincial budget's inflection point is kind of right at equilibrium, which is net benefit and positive for Alberta as a whole. So we were leading the pack before, and this has just put a magnifying glass and magnified all of the net positive of geopolitical tensions, human capital side for Alberta. With that, what does our forecast say right now? Our economists have been very accurate to date on where they think rates are going to be. The top line number is where we think the Bank of Canada is going to keep rates. They think we're at 2.25, and we're basically going to stay there for the better half, like throughout this year. We might raise rates early into next year. I've always said, even if we stay at 2.25, we go to 2.5. I'm not concerned. We need to stay below 2.75. That's Canada's estimated neutral rate. What rate we're agnostic about taking on debt to stimulate the economy or getting rid of debt. We need to be below that number to stimulate growth. So even if you raise it a little bit, that's not going to be a concern. We still need to be in a positive environment for growth moving forward. US, a little bit different. We're not allowed to touch US interest rates, given the governing legislation. James will get into that in a little bit. But they haven't been cutting rates as aggressively as the rest of the world. They just had a new Fed chair step in. And you guys have heard me say this before. I've never seen a real estate developer that likes high rates. And now one's the president of the USA. So you're probably going to get lower rates at some point in time in the States. How aggressively is yet to be seen. With that, I'm going to pass it to James to kind of position on that's the rate environment we're in. How does that translate to the portfolio? And then just kind of pass it back to you guys for questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chart. So I'll walk you through just briefly how we manage the money for the city of Lacombe. Just to give you an idea, so everything starts with the MGA Section 250. Nothing we do is ever going to violate the MGA. If we introduce new investment products to the portfolio, we get legal involved to make sure that they are compliant with the governing legislation. The investments that we're buying for the city of Lacombe are the same investments we're buying for, dozens of your peers. So we're not too concerned about that. Then we go into investment policy, so making sure that we're diversified amongst, different issuers, different time horizons. Everything we do is customized to match the liquidity needs, the unique considerations for the city of Lacombe. So it's not a pooled fund. The city of Lacombe owns each individual investment line, and it's completely customized based on a lot of communication with administration. Next, we go into market environment, which we kind of just walked you through. What are the risks? What are the return expectations? Now, we're dealing in fixed income, so everything we buy is principal guaranteed. We're not too concerned about that. It's just how can we maximize the return subject to the constraints of the MGA. And then the next part is portfolio management. So how do we actually allocate the portfolio? I'm going to walk you through what it looks like. And then review and rebalancing, which is what we're doing right now, making sure everyone's up to date on what's happening with the portfolio. And if there's anything that needs to be changed going forward, again, it's an iterative process with administration and we're in constant communication. Just to really briefly go over the MGA Section 250, it's very broad. It essentially just says, in a nutshell, don't lose money. We can invest in securities issued by the government of Canada, a province or territory, municipal bonds, school divisions, and securities issued by banks. So we focus on securities issued by banks. The main reason is we get a premium for investing in bank bonds versus government bonds. What's not applicable to the city of Lacombe is shares of a corporation. We don't risk any of the capital. This is tax dollars, so everything that we manage about $4.3 billion, and we like to sleep at night. So we don't do equities with tax money. There's 3 cities that do it: City of Calgary, Edmonton, and Medicine Hat. But they manage, multi-billion-dollar portfolios. That's not what we're dealing with here.
Just to add to what James said, right now, in the current rate environment, we're focusing on bank issued product. We haven't historically looked at government issued, depending on where the rates are at, depending on yields are at. We've owned provincial bonds. We've tilted away from them now, or we do have the ability to kind of pivot.
Yeah, so I mean, I've kind of already, covered these, but these are what we'd call the four pillars of institutional investment management. I apologize for those on council that have seen this before. But number one is always preservation of capital. That's our number one goal. So safety of principal is the primary objective. Number two, risk mitigation. So making sure we're diversifying the assets. We're not putting it all in one basket or with one bank. And then once we're in that safe box, how do we maximize the return on investment? I'm going to walk you through the performance in a minute here. But that is our job, is once we're in that safe box, we're monitoring things literally every day. How can we maximize the rate of return to protect the reserve funds from the eroding effects of inflation, which has been huge over the last decade, and to generate cash flow to help fund operations. And last but not least is liquidity needs. So making sure that the portfolio is customized specifically for the city of Lacombe. It's not a pooled fund. It's designed specifically to match the spending requirements of the city. And again, it's an iterative process over time. Just to kind of just really briefly here, just to give you kind of, if we zoom out, I mean, it's really easy to get tied up in the news cycles of, this is going to be a big crisis, the markets are crashing, et cetera, et cetera. It's been a very strong year, a strong series of years for the Canadian stock market. This shows you the TSX composite going back to, I can't read that, 2021. So you can see, we have these big news announcements like the tariffs announced, market will sell off and then bounce back up again. Same with the Iran conflict. We saw a big sell-off and a bounce back. This is less relevant to the city of Lacombe because we invest in fixed income, but there are investments in the portfolio that are designed to pay off based on these profiles. So those types of bonds are the reason why we've outperformed significantly versus the broad market index. As Char kind of alluded to, interest rates, we kind of navigated the city through the most sharpest, fastest rise in interest rates that's ever happened on record. That was not fun for Char and I, but we came out of it looking very strong. And the current range-bound environment, we're not expecting any major changes to interest rates, as Char mentioned, keeping that overnight rate below 2.75, and we might see the bond rates tick up slightly, which we can take advantage of when appropriate. This is kind of the money slide. This is how the portfolio has performed. Right now, we're managing just over 21 million for the city. The second number there, yield to maturity cost of 4.06. That's our baseline number. So the minimum rate of return we would expect based on the cost yield of the bonds. The average duration, we keep things pretty short. I know in municipal world, anything over 1 year is long-term, but in our world, 10 years or less is short-term, 10 to 20 is mid, and 20 plus is long. So the average duration is just under 7 years. And then we've just, we don't typically focus too much on performance, but it's been so strong that we wanted to kind of highlight it to council today. So it shows you what the government bond index has done, the universe bond index has done, and what the city of Lacombe's portfolio has done. We want to make it clear that there's no index that accurately reflects the MGA. So we're just using indices here that actually have the ability to take more risk, own corporate bonds, et cetera, which we can't buy versus what we've done. So 2024, if you'd bought just the government bond index, you would have got a return of 4%. City of Lacombe did about 8.5%. If you in 2025, the index did 3.75. We did 4.74, and then year to date, if you just bought the index, you'd be up 0.6. We're up 1%. So since inception, so going back to 2020. Which, COVID years, I think everyone in the world seems to have just blocked out COVID, but, COVID did happen and it was a very difficult time for fixed income managers. If you just invested in, say, a bond, broad index, the portfolio would not have kept up with inflation. It would have done 0.6% per year. which would have meant real purchasing power lost for the city of Lacomb's residents. We've outperformed that by a material amount. The portfolio has done 3.08% per year since 2020. So we've outpaced inflation significantly. And so going forward, the strategy, we're going to continue monitoring things daily, locking in excess capital gains when we can. Anyone on administration knows we're in constant communication where there's opportunities to reinvest at higher yields, crystallize excess capital gains. And again, just maintaining that disciplined strategy has really paid off for the city of Lacombe.
Just to add to what James said, he was talking about how there's no index that accurately represents the Municipal Government Act. I just want to make sure I get a little bit more clarity on that. Given what we're allowed to buy in the MGA, government of Canada bonds, provincial bonds, and essentially bank bonds, if we use the government index, that underrepresents the amount of return because we can't buy the bank bonds. The Canada Universe Index includes things like Enbridge bonds, Pembina bonds that we're not allowed to buy. So although there is not an accurate benchmark to truly benchmark you guys against, we want to show you that in context of the market, we're still doing good. So we're not just picking and choosing one or the other.
Yeah, good point. I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but just this is what the portfolio looks like in terms of issuer diversification, asset allocation, and credit ratings. I guess for the group here, what's important is the credit rating on the right there. We're very heavily tilted towards AA rated bonds. I'll walk you through that in a minute. But the highest credit quality stuff that's available from the banks in the provinces. Right now, the portfolio is 100% invested in bank bonds. We don't own any provincial bonds because we're getting a wide spread for owning the bank credit over the provincial credit. And then on the left there shows you the issuer diversification. It's well diversified across the major banks. And I'll walk you through in a second. In terms of credit quality, like I just mentioned, everything we own is A and AA rated. So it's the same credit quality that the government of Alberta bonds have, BC bonds, Ontario bonds. The major charter banks also issue debt that's rated A and AA. So it's our job to kind of look at the universe. We shop all the banks, make sure we get the best rates we possibly can for the city of Lacombe.
And just to add to this as well, the reason, like technically in the MGA, we can go out and buy BBB bonds if they're issued by a bank. We don't touch those. To give you guys context of what type of credit quality there is, we don't want to risk. That goes back to the first principle, don't lose money, right? So we don't want to put capital at risk at any point in time. That's why we only play in the safest place possible.
We also haven't bought Government of Canada bonds. I've been doing this for 19 years and I don't remember the last time I bought a Government of Canada bond. You don't get it's too technical for this purpose, but you don't get an additional credit spread for owning Government of Canada bonds.
Pretty sure you get paid more in the savings account than buying government.
Yeah. We don't want the reserve funds to be eroded by inflation. Just really quickly here shows you the maturity schedule of the portfolio. You can see there it kind of represents a barbell where we've got money tilted to the short term, which gives the city a lot of flexibility when it comes to if there's any liquidity needs that need to come up. And in the current environment, it's perfect because we can still get yields north of 5% based on investments that are available today. So we've got a lot of flexibility built in there, and then it's barbelled to the longer term as well, as we get paid more for owning longer term credit.
And just to give you guys an understanding of the process of when this happens, when something comes due, we're not just ad hoc throwing it anywhere. One, we don't have discretion, and we have to work with administration on that. Two, you guys' administration is really communicative and responsive with us. So anytime we're buying something, it's a forced touch base with us in terms of liquidity, so we can sleep at night to make sure that the money is there for you guys when you need it. If there's a known capital project that we have to liability match with, we will start customizing that as well.
Good point. Okay, so in summary, as we've kind of demonstrated over the last 6 years, maintaining a consistent asset allocation is very powerful long term. The city's portfolio has beat the major benchmarks by a wide margin. We want to focus on quality and liquidity, so the money's there when you need it, and capture opportunities as markets evolved. We've significantly boosted our team in terms of technological capabilities to monitor things on a daily basis, so that when there's an opportunity to increase yield, capture gains, it's immediately identified and we reach out to administration. So in a nutshell, the portfolio is set up to take advantage of the current interest rate environment, and we wouldn't recommend making any major changes to the portfolio at this time. So that's a lot of information in a short period of time, but we'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from members of council? Councillor Contenti.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs, to our presenters. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Just a question. I see our rate of returns based on our on your investments. How does that look in regards to inflation, added in inflation? What are those inflation numbers there, or this is without inflation?
Yes, that would be the nominal number. That's not real. It's hard to kind of put that in there, but inflation will spike one way or the other, but if you want to.
Yeah, if you ask any economist, and I've talked to a lot of them over the years, if you ask them what inflation is going to be, they're going to say 2%. That's what the Bank of Canada targets as an inflation rate. They try and keep prices steady and employment stable. So long term, if you're beating 2%, your money's compounding. It's retaining the purchasing power for the residents of the city of Lacombe. And so you're outpacing that long-term number of the last 6 years.
Yeah, you always want to look at the since inception number, because if we look at 2024, 8.48 sounds a great number, but inflation, I think, was pretty high in that year too. So some years it might spike high, some years it might spike a little bit, 2%. Economists are.
So do you have a number for the last 5 years on the average, what that would?
Of inflation?
Yeah.
Don't know it off the top of my heart.
Okay.
Yeah, we can absolutely provide it if you need it, for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor DeBresser.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Definitely appreciate it. As a councillor, I don't want to be in the position of losing taxpayers' money as well. So my question is, and this came up around the conversation about lobbying the provincial government on widening the ability to invest in different assets, different things outside of the current MGA. Would you want to speak to that? I'm not sure if I've asked the question correctly, but do you think the MGA is too restrictive in what municipalities can invest in?
So I'll start and you can add to it. I think so. Great question, Councillor DeBresser. It's nice to call you Councillor DeBresser. So the MGA is there to safeguard taxpayer money, right? We've seen this in Ontario and in BC. There are conversations going on in Alberta now about the ability to invest in equities for municipalities. We think it has to be done carefully and structured. In Ontario, I will say, so it was about 2018, they introduced what's called the prudent investor rule, which allowed municipalities to go out and buy pooled funds of equities, right? There was a very few number of the 444 municipalities in Ontario. I don't know the current number, but it was less than 20 that actually went out and did it. It's usually the larger ones, like your cities of Toronto, city of Calgary, city of Edmonton. We have products in the portfolio. The reason being, we have products in the portfolio, as you well know, that give us equity-like payoffs, which is why the returns are better than the benchmark, without taking any risk. So yeah, we're monitoring it. It's come up recently, but as far as we know right now, nothing is changing under the MGA.
The time of your question is very coincidental. I had a conversation with one of the municipalities on Friday about exactly this conversation. Where the issue comes up, and this is just personal opinion coming out, is you can't just broadly go out and change the MGA, because it's not about necessarily the city of Lacombe, the city of Grand Prairies of the world. It's the Sexsmiths or the Clares homes that don't have the scale and scope to protect themselves from themselves. So it's less so about changing the MGA. I would personally argue that you need to change the exemption process, because right now the way the exemption process works is, in order to get that exemption, you have to file under the Big City Act, which basically means you get all this extra administrative outside of investments. So there needs to be a separate exemption process, in my opinion, that says, hey, we have the scale and scope to do this. Because if we grandfather from everybody, you're talking to two portfolio managers. Of course, we'd love to buy equities and make you guys significantly more rates of return. However, we have to protect everybody under the MGA, right? So that would be just my 2 cents on it, just changing the exemption process rather than broad brushing the full MGA.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that. My other question is the way we kind of balanced the budget this year for 2026 was increased our interest revenue by about 350,000, totaling about 875,000 that we're recognizing in the operating budget. Given the rates look like they're going to go back up, do you think that's sustainable to recognize 875,000 for the near term, if not for the next 5 years?
Short answer, yes.
Thank
Just short answer, yes, given what we know is in the portfolio, the minimum rates of return we've locked in and the forecast right now.
But just to add to that, Councillor DeBresser, we've expanded our analytics team, so we do have the ability, and I don't believe we've done it yet. We've done the forecast versus actual. Okay, we can compare the forecast versus the actual. So we track this over time, and if it starts to dip, then we'll make you aware of it right away.
Councillor Span.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. It's been great to see the thought that gets put into your investment decisions, and I feel as though the returns that we're seeing are great considering the restrictions that we have under the MGA. I do think it would be wise for the provincial government to expand some of that, as I've made aware to the council earlier. Currently, we're only invested in fixed income, and it's fixed income within Canada. Is that correct?
Correct.
We're expecting to see we're expecting to see interest rates maybe slightly increase, just very moderately. What happens to bond prices when interest rates go up?
So they go down. The nice thing about the strategy we have is the city owns the individual line items, so we always have the ability to hold it to maturity if needed, right? So if the price temporarily dips, we don't really care because we've got a cost yield that's locked in and we can hold it to maturity.
Just to add to that as well, Councillor, this is why you'll never see us take all the city's money and buy like a 10-year or longer bond. We will never go out and play outside of 10 years because it's one thing to say, hey, your money's principal guaranteed, but it's tied up for 20 years. You can never touch it for 20 years. So the biggest thing that we stress about is liquidity, making sure there's money available for you when it's needed. That's why it's not an all or nothing strategy. It's a laddered strategy for exactly that reason. Is why, although we like to forget COVID and the rising rate environment that we did, we could sleep at night because we knew the funds were protected and liquid when needed.
Through Mayor Hibbs to presenters, what percentage of our portfolio would you consider to be long-term?
So Councillor, we've got the distribution here. It's barbelled. I don't have the exact percentages here, right?
Yeah, asking fixed income managers that have an average duration of 7 what long-term is, nothing is technically long-term, but in your guys' world, longer than 1 year. I would say the longest thing that you guys could think of is those 2035 maturities. Now, I want council to remember that just because it says 2035, that's not when you have to wait. One, everything's liquid. We can access it early if we need to, accessing positive total returns. And we added expected life on there as well in terms of callability. We work with banks. We model a lot of this in our Bloomberg models to make sure that we have funds readily available for you. So although even with the regular maturity schedule we have right now, like 10%, 20% is longer term, in our universe is not, it's still going to be held for a shorter period of time.
Yeah, and a really good important point is we'll never buy a bond. We haven't longer than a 10-year duration, 10-year bond. We've seen a lot of municipalities, sorry, not a lot, but there's been a handful of municipalities, especially out in Ontario, that took all their money during COVID, invested into 30-year bonds at 2%. Now everything is underwater and they're in deep trouble because they have an $11 million unrealized loss and they need the money, right? So we're not here to, lose sleep at night. We keep things laddered. We'll never go past 10 years.
So we don't have a 50% of the reserves that we hold are intended for 5 years or longer from now. It's just all kind of part of the same strategy.
The only time you would ever see that deviate is, let's say there's a capital project or something like that. We would liability match that one line. But outside, what you would see us do is open up a separate account for attribution. So it's very clearly segregated amongst the portfolio.
And my understanding would be there too. Part of the reason for that is because we don't have a lot of flexibility with the investment options anyway. So you're investing it in very similar things, regardless of whether it's intended next year or 5 years from now.
We could invest, technically take all the money, buy a 30-year provincial bond or a 30-year bank bond. But in our world, we're now speculating on what interest rates we're doing, and going back to principle one, don't lose money. That's what we need to always, we focus on return of capital over return on capital. Once we have that figured out, then we'll look at maximizing rate of return. As soon as you start to prioritize the other one, you get into a situation where you're buying things that aren't prudent that can put you guys offside liquidity.
Anything further, Councillor Span?
Just maybe to illustrate to the rest of council here. I know Councillor DeBresser touched on this a little bit, but as far as the dollar impact that an additional 1% rate of return can make on our overall portfolio, would you be able to give us a bit of an estimate on that?
210,000, I believe.
An additional 1% interest makes a difference of $210,000 on our budget.
Based on a 21 million portfolio. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Proud.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs, and thank you for the presentation. I just had a question in regards, you mentioned provincial bonds, Government of Canada bonds, and bank bonds, and 100% bank bonds. So I'm wondering why not the diversification, especially within Alberta? You mentioned the Government of Canada, but why not provincial bonds?
So we do have portfolios, for example, other municipalities that might have $1 billion, we'll throw in, a significant chunk into provincial bonds. We earn what's called a credit spread over the provincial bonds. So let's say like very broad numbers. Do we have like, the credit spreads on banks versus provies right now?
Yeah, right now it's about 0.5% per year.
So we earn an additional 0.5%. We just had the question about the impact of a 1% difference of 210,000. So we earn, I guess, an additional 100,000 by owning bank bonds versus provincial bonds. So for that reason, it's currently all invested in bank bonds. It's getting late in the night, guys.
Just to add to what James is saying is, we're not necessarily focused on all bank bonds versus all provincial bonds. This slide is very important because it's what are we putting at risk to get that additional rate of return. You can see that AA and A rated credit. Provincial bonds and bank bonds have the exact same credit quality. If you guys gave me your money, you would demand a significantly higher rate of return than you gave a bank, right? So the credit quality of the bank or province of Alberta is the exact same in the eyes of the Dominion Bond Rating Service. So we're going, if you're going to pay me more to own a bank, if I'm going to get paid more to own a bank bond with the same credit quality, we're going to take it subject to the spread. So sometimes they get really tight where I'm only going to get 0.1% per year. We go, that's not enough based on historical spreads. Now it's gotten wide. So we go, that is enough. And so we just kind of allocate that way.
Yeah, good point. So essentially we monitor the credit spreads over time, and when they're tight, we'll allocate to provincial bonds. When they're wide, we'll allocate to bank bonds.
Does not appear to be any more questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very timely. It's always very informative. I very much appreciate it. Do you know, will the slides be available to members of council?
Yeah, we sent them. I apologize for traveling, so we missed the cutoff for you guys' agenda package, but we did send them over for you guys to distribute.
Very good. All right.
Thank you very much for having us.
CEO Gowdy, did you have something? Sorry.
Not directly related to your presentation, but we did want to introduce you to a new member of our team who you'll be dealing with, and take the opportunity to introduce her to our council as well. It's just your second week here, so I'll pass it over to Director Thompson.
Sure, thanks, CEO Gowdy, and just wanted to introduce Annette Gordon to our team. Annette, if you wouldn't mind standing up. So Annette brings strong expertise in municipal accounting, budgeting, and financial reporting, along with a solid background in internal controls and risk management. And she's held senior roles in Alberta and multiple municipalities. And she started last week. So I just want to say welcome to Annette and introduce her to the rest of council and to you.
Fantastic.
Very good. Thank you very much. Councillor Dyke-Slag.
Just to conclude on that comment, Presentation informative, very, seems it was the first time I've seen it. So I can't wait to see it again because I think I'll learn a little gem every time. Appreciate the slides so I can review them. But what really stood out to me was 2 or 3 times you complimented the relationship between administration and yourselves in having that constant communication and dialogue about the investments. And so I really appreciated hearing that and knowing that our administration is waiting for your call or vice versa. So thank you to administration for their effort to always keep our dollars attended to well.
Great point.
Thank you. All right, I will excuse you from the presenter table then, if there are no further questions. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
I did say that we had 3 presentations, which we still do. However, we are now past 6 o'clock, which means it's public hearing time. So I'm going to veer over to our public hearing section of our agenda. All right, so I declare a statutory public hearing for bylaw 400.78 open. And this hearing is held pursuant to section 7, 216.4, 606, 640, 674, and 692 of the MGA 2000 as amended, and request the legislative coordinator confirm the purpose of this public hearing. Thus, a statutory public hearing notice was advertised as required by the city's advertising bylaw, and that any written submissions be received and not included in the public hearing agenda are read into record. And just to make sure that it's clear, it is 6:30 that we are beginning our public hearing. Legislative Coordinator Post.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs and Council. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide an opportunity for the general public to offer input on the proposed amending bylaw 400.78, which received its first reading on March 23rd, 2026. Bylaw 400.78 proposes to amend land use bylaw 400. If approved, bylaw 400.78 will amend table 14.5.1 municipal heritage inventory historic buildings of the land use bylaw 400 to remove the Stewart resident 5718 50th Avenue from the municipal heritage inventory and added to the municipal historic resources, and adding the Owen residence 5210 53rd Street to the municipal historic resources. In accordance with the city's advertising bylaw 482 and section 606 of the Municipal Government Act regarding advertising requirements, a public hearing notice was published in the Lacombe Express on Thursday, April 2nd and Thursday, April 9th, 2026, and included in the published agenda package. Mayor Hibbs and Council, no written submissions were received, and the city received no registration from members of the public to speak.
Very well. So I will open it up to the gallery, to anybody that has oral presentations. I will ask for them in order of those in favor, those opposed, and anyone deemed to be affected. All persons giving oral presentations are to clearly state their name, and presentations are to be brief and to the point. And so, as I referenced earlier, the order of the statutory public hearing shall be development officer or designate. That would be first. Do we have a presentation?
Just wait for it to come up here. All right. Okay, thank you, Mayor Hibbs, and good evening, Council. So tonight I'm presenting on bylaw 400.78, which will amend table 14.51 in the bylaw, that's the municipal heritage inventory, by removing buildings that have been elevated from the inventory to municipal designation. So Lacombe has been fortunate to see several buildings designated as municipal historic resources. In many cases, these buildings have progressed from the inventory up to formal designation. So table 14.51 in the bylaw provides a summary of buildings on the inventory and a summary of the buildings that have been designated as municipal historic resources. So as the designations are approved, the table should be updated accordingly. All right, so I'll just take you through a couple definitions. So first, what is the heritage inventory? So that is a list of evaluated historic buildings in Lacombe that have the potential to become a municipal historic resource and have been documented through a statement of significance, or an SOS for short. So what is an SOS? There's an example of it on the right-hand side of the screen there. So basically an SOS is a document that identifies the description, the heritage value, the character defining elements of a historic building, and it's one of the items that you need to designate a building as a municipal historic resource. And a historic building is any principal building or place that is listed on the heritage inventory. And what is a municipal historic resource? Well, that's a building that has been designated as a municipal historic resource. So that's through a standalone bylaw in accordance with the Historical Resources Act. Designation is voluntary and initiated by the property owner. Once the bylaw is approved, the designation is registered on the land title, and it does establish legal restrictions such as the property's character defining elements cannot be altered or removed, and the building cannot be demolished. So once a building is elevated from the inventory to designation, it should be removed from the inventory and moved over to the list of designated buildings to accurately reflect our lists. While designation decisions do not require a public hearing, amendments to the land use bylaw do. So to avoid procedural confusion and delays to the designation process, and in recognition of the Heritage Resources Committee's goal to designate 3 buildings a year, the land use bylaw amendments are not undertaken concurrently with designation. Instead, the list of amendments are brought forward in the first quarter of each year. So table 14.51 currently contains 55 heritage inventories and 15 designated properties. So since then, the following changes have been made. We've got the Stewart residence at 5718 50th Ave. It was municipally designated in 2025 and should be moved over to the list of designated buildings. We've then got the Owen residence at 5210 53rd Street. That was also municipally designated last year. This property was actually not included on the inventory, so the Heritage Resources Committee received an application from the owners to designate it. We hired a heritage consultant to prepare an SOS for us, and then the previous council approved the designation. So that one should also be moved over. And then we have 3 that were in the process of being designated when this list was put in the bylaw. So we've got McClear Block and Annex at 5006 to 5010 50th Ave, the Garland residence at 5204 53rd Street, and the Lacombe Nurseries Limited residence at 5650 58th Street. So these changes will bring the heritage inventory to 54 sites total and increase our municipal designation to 17 sites total, which are all squished on that screen for you. And then a disclaimer. So because this is only updated once at the beginning of every year, we should include a disclaimer in the land use bylaw that lets people know that the information is updated once annually, may not be current, and to contact planning and development services for accurate information. In addition, the amendment will update the land use bylaws table of contents to reflect the correct number of sites. So you can see the table of contents does say 55 sites, so it should be changed to accurately reflect the list. Public consultations. So the general public was consulted on the proposed changes through advertised notice published in the Lacombe Express on April 2nd and April 9th of this year. The public hearing was also advertised on the public announcements page of the website. So although the city website was not updated immediately following first reading of the bylaw, it was updated with the public hearing information prior to this evening's meeting. No public feedback was received. And then in accordance with our advertising bylaw 482, advertising can be completed through either the Lacombe Express or the city's website. So for this one, public engagement met all the requirements of the bylaw and the Municipal Government Act. And as municipal historic designation bylaws do not require a public hearing, the consultation undertaken related solely to proposed changes to the inventory and not to revisit any previously approved designations. So the recommendations tonight are that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.78 as presented, that council resolves to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.78 at the same meeting, a second reading, and that council gives third reading to bylaw 400.78 as presented, or that council direct administration how to proceed. Thank you, and I'm happy to support council in their deliberation.
Very good, thank you. Just a reminder, this is a public hearing and not the debate portion, but if anybody has a question on regards to the presentation that we just heard on this item, certainly is appropriate time to ask. Councillor Contenti?
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs, too. First presenter, up and down here, I can't seem to find, when does it change, or when is there a mandatory time that changes from inventory or historic resource to historic into an inventory? Is there a time frame? Does it have to be done every 5 years, 2 years, 3 years? When does it move from one to the other?
Right, so through Mayor Hibbs to Councillor Contenti. So basically what I just want to clarify, are you asking when it goes from inventory to designation?
Yes.
So that would be when a homeowner approaches us. So the Heritage Resources Committee does a lot of promotion on designating at the beginning of each year. Their hope is to get 3 designations per year. It's completely voluntary up to the homeowner. So they'll actually come apply to us, and then we'll come to you guys for consideration.
Thank you.
Councillor Span?
This is maybe more of a general question, and I'm just curious on your processes when deciding whether a property should be on the inventory list. What factors are used?
Good question through the chair to Councillor Span. So the Heritage Resources Committee, sorry, I am the city representative for the committee, so that's why I keep saying we, but the Heritage Resources Committee hired a heritage consultant in 2022, 2023 to actually drive around and look at every house in Lacombe, or every property, and they made a list. It went through the Heritage Resources Committee then. They figured out the 55 sites. We held an open house. We had members of the public come. They could review their SOS. They could tell us if they wanted to be on the list, if they didn't, and they kind of assessed it from there. And this is what we ended up with.
Very good. Oh, Councillor Goings?
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. More of a curiosity question. How far back in a property's history do we go to determine the name? Is it the original name of the property or the most well-known?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So through the chair to all of council, I think this is a good general question. So all of the research is done through the Heritage Consultant and the Heritage Resources Committee. They will go to the Historical Society and get archives, and then they'll find all the information that they possibly can through provincial and municipal documents and go from there. You're welcome.
That does appear to be the end of your questions, so you can retire yourself from the presenter table. So I would now ask those that may be present that wish to speak in favor to identify themselves now. Seeing no one, I will invite any of those opposed who wish to address council, to come up to the presenter table. Again, just a reminder to please use the microphone and to clearly state your name and to keep your presentation brief and on point, please.
Thank you. My name is Wayne Armershaw. I'm an interested citizen, a resident and ratepayer of the city of Lacombe. Honorable Mayor Hibbs, esteemed members of council, and dedicated city administration. I've made this presentation. I scrawled it at the speed of speaking, and I am truly proud of being in a community that has such a large inventory of heritage buildings. However, I think the heritage consultant engaged to update Lacombe Heritage Inventory as per table 14.1.5.1 used inconsistent criteria and made questionable identification or debatable identification of several properties. Now, I have spoken to Senior Development Officer Jennifer Kirk about this, and will be corresponding in writing in the near future for the Heritage Resource Committee to review before the next annual report. And I'm only here to be recorded, not to give specifics on any sites. Thank you.
Very well. Do I have anyone else that wishes to speak that is opposed? Any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard? I see no one coming forward. Therefore, seeing no further speakers, I declare the public hearing for bylaw 400.78 closed at 6:44 p.m. So this will then return us to presentations. But before we begin our third presentation, I need to declare a conflict of interest as this matter upcoming relates to the assisted living sector in which my employer operates. I will not participate in this item or related items and will step away. I'll ask Deputy Mayor Span to assume the chair.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to invite the presenters for Caris Village to come forward. Looks like you're there. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. And I'm not sure if you've used the microphone before, but there's a big long button that you can press and then you can speak. I'm hoping you give me a reason to use this.
Thank you, Deputy Member and Council members and the CAO. We appreciate this opportunity to spend some time with you. My name is Merle Jacobson. I'm the co-treasurer on the board of directors for Caris Village for the past just about 9 years. And I'll introduce here in a second the people that are here as well. But I also want to thank the city in the past for the support they've given to Caris Village. This has been a long, hard undertaking, and the previous councils has given us some leeway on reduced development fees and security deposits, as well as some funding for a non-Caris power line that we had to bury. And so those things made a lot of things easier for us as we took and moved forward. I also want to thank the management and the staff, especially in the planning, development, and engineering departments for our many planning, pre-planning, problem solving. They've been responsive to our needs. We haven't always seen eye to eye on everything, but we've worked through everything professionally. And they've assisted us as we work through Caris Village, not only on past, but as we look forward into the future, recognizing some of the challenges and things as we're on the outskirts of town and how do we take and work through that. With me today, with the board of directors, we have Wim Shekel, our board vice chair. We also have Peter Zudoff, one of the founding board members. We have Martin Van de Poel, one of the new board members, but he's also the chair of our development committee. And we have Dr. Ron Keller, who's a new board member as well. Oh, sorry. I didn't see Steve. Steve's actually our board chair. And I didn't see him walk in. So here to support us as well, we have Aptus Engineering, who have been an important part of putting the development together as we work through the development needs and some of the infrastructure deficiencies that we have. And so we have Gord Jinkling, Vice President of Finances with Aptus, and Brandon Whitmore, the project manager for us. And I also see we have one of our residents, Bert Tornstra as well has come to join us today as well. So, okay. In our vision, we have the main focus around it is how do we have a not-for-profit organization that focuses entire resources on providing for seniors and ensuring that their needs are addressed. The mission that we have around that is providing the facilities from independent living through continuing care. And we want to make sure that our environment that we create is based on Christian values. We want to make sure then that the service provided focus around the needs of those residents based on the social, spiritual, physical, emotional needs. But we also want to provide that continuum of care so that it reduces the stress and strain that change happens as we age. We have 5 values that we have put together. From these values, we developed a model of care that has been guiding us over the past few years. The underlying principle of this model of care is bringing the care to the resident and not the resident to the care. Many times now when a person needs more care, they get moved from one place to another, and that adds more challenges for the family and for the residents. We want to make sure that where you're at is where you can stay, and we bring the care to you. So how did CARES come to be? So I'm just going to tell a little story about how this started. So it began with the personal experience of Pauline Prins, current board member. And she says it begins with a transfer, a walk, and a whisper. One day in the fall of 2007, Pauline was the charge nurse in Lacombe Hospital, once again found herself arranging for a transfer of an elderly gentleman who farmed in the Lacombe area his whole life. She knew his family, rode the school bus with his daughter, and now she was separating this couple by 60 kilometers. She now faced their tears and angers across from the nursing desk. After work, she went for a walk, vented with the Lord why Lacombe couldn't provide for one of their long-term citizens. And the answer came in a whisper, well, then you start. It wasn't that this hadn't been attempted before. 15 years earlier, another group of people in Lacombe tried to promote the development of independent and sort of supportive living, but it was abandoned the idea when faced with many, many challenges. But the whisper came with such clarity, she knew that it needed to be tried again. First poor people she approached said yes, and one of those included Peter Zudoff, our board member, Hans Spelt, and Peter Kuipers. While the last two are no longer board members, they still actively share their skills and knowledge with Caris Village. Over the past 19 years, Pauline has seen the vision gain momentum. 19 years later, the vision continues to take shape. The one thing that's driven Caris Village as well is the recognition that the aging population, especially in seniors, and you've seen where the government of Alberta has recognized this, is the largest demographic increase they'll probably see in more than a generation. And there's such a shortfall that's approaching now, but even coming in the near future, that facilities like this are needed. So coming out of 2015, we put together a master plan for which was submitted to the city in 2018 for approval. And it has 5 basic phases. So the phase 1A, which is in the south, east, and west, is the phase that we're just have completed. So it has a 46-unit independent living building and 10 duplex buildings. The phase we're working on right now is just the 8 duplexes to the north, and those will be finished construction early in 2027. Just to the east and north of the 46-unit building is where we'll have Independent Plus. So that building will have independent living, but also have meal plan and housekeeping plans. And then to the north of that is what we're here to talk about today, is a continuing care center. And it's going to be put together in phases, and we'll go through that in a bit. And then just to the west of that's another independent living building as well. So in the end, there will be 3 apartment type buildings for independent living. There will be 14 duplexes buildings, so 28 duplexes, and then there will be continuing care made up of supported living and long-term care of around 280 units. So what do we accomplish? So again, in phase 1A, right in the middle of COVID is when we started the first residents moving in. So we started out with a bare field, trying to convince people that something was going to happen here. And the first residents moved in May of 2020. And it took us quite a while to fill this, but right now the building only has one vacant unit, which we use as the office. So basically it's fully occupied. So the good part with this is that all of our long-term debt has been paid off, and we are creating the waiting list of who want to make Caris Village their home. So we have the 10 duplexes that are constructed, and again, they're all occupied except for one. And they continue to be a popular choice amongst residents moving in. So that takes us to where we're at now, where we're developing the last of the 14 duplex buildings. So we have the 4 buildings that are under construction. And of those, even prior to construction, 75% of those were leased prior to construction starting. So Bert is here to see, because this is his house that's being constructed there. So he's in one of the duplexes now, but he has always from day one said he wants this one corner one. So we started that one first for him. So what is next? So in December 2025, the government of Alberta announced a continuing care capital grant program for constructing new continuing care spaces. So this isn't the first time that Caris Village tried this. So in 2020, the government of Alberta was looking for organizations to take and build on their own continuing care centers, for which they would issue a operating contract. And so we went through and did the work with that. And in the end, when we actually ended up receiving a conditional letter of approval, but when we worked on our own through the financial due diligence, what you were paid for care and what you were allowed to charge for rent, in order to make it marginally financially viable, would have taken a 50% equity in that. So either you needed a capital grant or some other form of equity. Since our resources only allowed for a 10% equity in the project, we took and withdrew. So then we also had several meetings with the Minister of Health around this, shared with her openly all of our findings, and then from that, the government announced then for this capital grant program. So we took and applied for that. So it works out to, it was only available for the priority communities, which Lacombe was identified as one, and the grants to a maximum of $450,000, and the applicant has to contribute 10% of the project as equity. We're lucky where it can be considered land, the development of land, and cash are the only things that are allowed, and priority is given to shovel-ready projects. So the picture here is where the building would go. So again, we applied for the grant in February. We're expecting to hear shortly. There has been some rumors going around that the government of Alberta could potentially begin rolling out the approvals this week. And so we'll see where that ends up. Eagle Builders has taken and designed the building. They followed our care model in being able to bring the care to the person, not the person to the care. So each unit is designed so it can either be a supportive living or a long-term care. So if the person needs that additional care that long-term care brings, we just bring the care to that person, not having to move them now to another facility. It'll also have memory care space, couple suites, and hospice spaces as well. So these rooms are 40% larger than what the minimum requirements are under the 2023 design guidelines of the provincial government. And they're constructed on the similar basis that we've done our other buildings to make sure that they're soundproof and comfortable. As well, the building incorporates each household. So on one side of one floor is 18 units, and that's considered a household. If you go that whole floor is considered a neighborhood. So what we did, we wanted to make sure that the buildings are safe not only for the residents, but for workers and visitors. So if an outbreak of some type of illness happens, a particular household can be isolated off from the rest of the building. So that isn't where you have to close the whole building. The building can stay open. Visitors can still come. And so this allows us to take and manage an outbreak without disrupting the entire complex. This building is designed so that phases can be added in. This particular part of the building incorporates all of the common area facilities. So you have your common lobby, common area spaces, treatment rooms, kitchen, cafes, chapels, offices, dining rooms, living rooms, mechanical systems. So right now it's shaped like a U, and the middle section is where all the dining rooms and living rooms are. And as the demand and needs grows, we can add on 1 or 2 more wings. And so at a dramatically reduced cost, because we've already have all of the common area costs occurred in this particular phase. We're also fortunate to engage Covenant Care as our care provider. So Caris Village as itself doesn't have any experience in operating a care center, but Covenant Care, who operates care homes and hospitals across the province, has agreed to be our care provider. With that, when we were searching, we wanted to make sure that the organization had similar values to that of Caris, and we found that Covenant Care's model and values followed ours very, very closely. So they're also, I have a strategy as well around how do you begin in recruiting staff and for a facility like this. So we have some targets put in place. So Aptus has been working already on doing all the development plan to develop the lots and the needed roads. And we hope to have that done shortly, and hopefully by the end of May, be able to have a development agreement done. By August, the development permit, September, building permit, and construction beginning October 2027, with occupancy permit, building permit 2026 of October and starting then. Construction complete October 2027, so 1 year. Occupancy permit in November, commissioning in December, and the first residents being able to move in December 2027. So this is about as close to shovel ready as I think you can get. So basically we're saying if the government gives their approval of us for a grant, we are ready to begin construction of the land and shortly after the building. If we're not successful in this capital grant, we are going to switch our focus to the Independent Plus building that I talked about. So we'd be in construction of that later this year. We would have independent living and a rental apartment, but it would also include meal plan and housekeeping plan. It's one of our largest requests that we have of people is, I just don't want to have to cook anymore, but I also don't want to go out to eat. I'd like to have everything done right there. And it'd be unique where the people there would be able to have meals, but the residents in the village would also be able to have meals there as well for a discount, but it'd also be open to community, just like a restaurant would be as well. So they could come in and be with the residents and order what they would like to eat. So it's a little bit different approach than what we have seen in the past. So we have some needs. And we spent quite a bit of time with the planning and development department and engineering on these. So it didn't come as a surprise when we approached them again. So there's many advantages to being a not-for-profit. But one of the challenges is the ability to raise equity. And you saw before is the only equity that we can have is land, film the land in cash. So loans, interest-free loans, I even asked the question, interest-free loans don't count. So you're very restricted. So it's not like if you're a corporation and you can go out and sell shares to raise equity to be able to pay a return. A not-for-profit can't do that. So we're really limited in how we can take and raise the funds. So basically, we end up having 3 ways: debts, which we can't do; grants, which the government of Alberta is coming out; and gifts. So because of this limitation is why we're making some of these requests, is to make sure that we were able to stay within our 10% budget requirement, which was very close to $6 million that we have to contribute to make our 10%. It's about a $60 million project. And so for this, we're asking the city to take and give us some help with this. So the first is, and this is the picture of where the road is, so Her Promenade. We, in our master plan, we agreed to build this road when we have started the construction of the third apartment building. But given where the location of this building is, we need to begin starting it now. But we'd only like to do part of it, just simply because of the cost of developing the whole road. We'd like to defer the balance of the road until we actually build the third apartment type building. And then the other piece we'd like is for the full release of our phase deposit that we have on hand. And we'll come to that. Everybody asked why is this called Her Promenade? And so I just thought I'd give you a little story for that as well. So it's named after two prominent long-term professors at Burman University. Dr. Larry Herr, he's a professor emeritus of religious studies, and he has spent his whole year studying religion, but he's also spent a lot of time in Jordan, taking and doing dig sites of various Christian locations to take and look at what kind of artifacts and things they can find to support Christian theories. And his wife, the late Dr. Denise Herr, was a professor of English literature emeritus. And they both contribute not only their time and expertise to many initiatives in Lacombe, but also at Burman University, such as sponsoring the Her Lecture Series. So it's named after those two professors. So this isn't as good a drawing as what you have in your binders, but where the red and blue lines come, that's how far you want to take and develop the road to. So basically it's interest off of Sini Trail to Caris Village Drive. And then when we do the third building, we'd extend it out to the west. So that's our first request. Our second request is access to a secondary source of water. So right now our source of water comes off of 72nd Avenue, and there is no secondary source readily available. This is required for the safety of the residents, especially in continuing care. So if you have one source of water that is unavailable, you have the second source that you should be able to take and rely on. And so we worked together with the city and with Aptus and identified two sources that secondary water could be brought in from. The first is off of 52nd Street, which is quite far to the west and going all the way around the north side of Henner's Pond and connecting in through Her Promenade. The second is at the end of 72nd Avenue and Ob Street. There is a high pressure line that's capped off there that could be accessed. Again, it has limited serviceability. It could service either all of Caris Village for the secondary source, or it could go expand a little bit and do a number of lots that could be developed to the north of Caris Village as well. So this gives the idea, you can see where the light blue lines are, where we connect into Ob Street, run along the Ob Street road allowance, and then cut in through the west side of Caris Village property over to the north side along Her Promenade to give the looping of the water. The other issue that we have run into is all the land for where we develop now. To the north, all slopes to the north, which is the opposite way you need sewer to run. And so it's requiring lift stations. In the city's long-term outlook plan, both for the looping of the water and for the flow of the sewer, is identified both of those at some point in the future being put in and paid for through offsite levies. So we've had to put our own lift station in because Bert's moving in pretty soon, so want to make sure the sewer is flowing the right way. This is designed enough to be able to do those duplexes plus one apartment building. It's also designed so it's expandable, so we can move it. So as we build the continuing care centers, the other one, you just move it to the north, can expand it to handle those and plus more. So that's why we selected this, because at that time the city had no, it wasn't even in the plans to be able to do that. And it's not inexpensive. I'd rather be building the rest of the roads than spending the money on a sewer system that at some point in the time you throw it away. But we have to have it now. So we're looking for some assistance on this as well, just because as the village grows and as things happen, this has the potential to be able to handle more than just what Caris Village does. And it may be able to be an interim solution to the city in putting in a long-term permanent lift station once the whole design of the north and west side of Lacombe is taken and determined. So what we're requesting is for the city to agree for us just to develop 43% of her promenade. So basically from CNE Trail to Caris Village Drive, and release the deposit that we have on hand, the cash deposit $152,960. Provide a secondary source of water to Caris Village, either through 52nd Street or Ob Street, and either provide a lift station or to consider over time taking ownership of all or part of Caris Village's lift station. If we can't, in our second part of that, if that can't be done, you know, we don't mind paying for stuff once, but we don't like paying for stuff twice. And so if it's unable to be done, then we'll have to fund those ourselves, both the water line. So we'd like access from the secondary water line from Ob Street along the road allowance. And then as well for the city to waive the future offsite levies for future Caris developments for phase 1B, 1C, and 1D and 1E. As those would have been used to fund these exact same things. So that's where my message is, you know, I don't mind paying for stuff once, but I struggle paying for things twice. So again, you know, I appreciate your time. I also want to take and just give you kind of the impact that a center like this could really have on Lacombe. So right now in our independent living, we have close to 40% of the residents are from outside of Lacombe, with a large number coming from Ontario and BC, and even some from the United States. And so it's a, you know, net increase that's coming into the city from that. As well, just this phase of the care center will employ about 70 professional and semi-professional staff. So a significant amount of new employment coming in. And when the continuing care center is complete altogether, we have just over 120 professional and semi-professional staff. So that again has that ripple effect all the way through the community for everything from housing to all the consumer products to taxes to everything else that happens. The other piece that we have found as well is some of those ripple effects have already happening. So Birmingham University has been a good supporter of us, given that we bought their land and would like to buy more of their land someday. But they have provided benefits to our residents already. So residents there can attend almost any of the events that happen at Birmingham University for no cost, including the Physical Education Center. Plus they all can take degree granting courses for no tuition cost to them. So we have been also working with them in collaboration to develop a certificate program for healthcare aides, which is the largest employment part of a continuing care center. And there's really nothing like that. So we felt as a good way to take and train new people coming in is if you put a certificate program together where they can do on the job learning plus classroom learning, that it accelerates that, that career for that individual. So again, we recognize the challenges when we're developing on the outskirts of the city, where the development that we have is growing faster than the infrastructure provided by the city. And again, you know, we're only focusing on requests not to have to pay for costs twice. And so we appreciate this opportunity to meet and are grateful for the interest and the support that the city has given us in the past and look forward to the future.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson, for your presentation. It's great to see you and your board's passion for this project. And the presentation you did tonight was fantastic. At this time, I'd like to open it up to comments or questions from council. CEO Gowdy.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to give a couple of notes before we get into the specific details, because we do have some requests for decision for council this evening. You'll note that often when you get a presentation for the first time, when council's receiving it, we're also receiving it for the first time administratively. And so in those instances, we really encourage council to look at having a pause between the presentation and making the actual decision, because we're not able to provide you with the information that we'd like to at that time, since we're just getting it. In this case, as Mr. Jacobson has highlighted, we've been working with the proponents for months, looking at these solutions. And so we do have what we think is the right information for you to make a decision this evening. There's no obligation to make one. You certainly, if there's more information you want, you can delay that decision. What you'll see in the proposals that we've brought forward, I hope demonstrates that we do want to see this go. We think this is an important part of the community, and we've offered some recommendations that we think compromise between sort of like the classic development pays for development view versus seeing the community benefit that a development like this would bring, and some of the needs that have been identified by council for seniors housing and that sort of thing that this satisfies. But I do want to just talk about 2 points that Mr. Jacobson raised during his presentation. One, I talked about a lot of the benefits, and I agree with almost all of them. You mentioned paying taxes. That is not likely to occur with this continuing care center.
Just on the one, all the rest is taxed.
The one we're talking about tonight,
Yes.
though, is not taxable. So that you need to know. Overall, the development is a great contributor of taxes to the city of Lacombe, and it will continue to be and grow. This phase, because it's a continuing care facility, would be exempt under the provincial legislation. The other one, I'm not sure that we'll see eye to eye on, is the paying twice philosophy. None of the projects that are being contemplated and requested tonight from council, the infrastructure projects, so water, sewer, are off-site levy projects that the city has identified as providing a more broad-based benefit. So the off-site levies don't actually contribute to the projects that are being talked about. So there's not really a paying twice. It's not to say, and we've talked about this, that perhaps the off-site levy bylaw could be updated to reflect some of these projects, but that's a really long process that will not meet the timeline needs. And so we are not currently collecting any money from this development or any other for the projects identified. So I just wanted to clarify from the city's perspective why we don't believe there's a double dipping in the infrastructure side. Having said that, I look forward to the presentations that my colleagues are going to give that I think do provide a path to seeing this important development move ahead here in Lacombe.
Thank you, CAO Gowdy. Any other questions? I had a couple myself then. When do you find out whether or not this one, the independent living or the continuing care center gets approved?
So when we did the application, it indicated May, June, but there is some indication that it could be as early as this week.
If the continuing care center does go ahead, you mentioned that the phase 1B would be pushed off. What would the timeline be on that?
We haven't looked that far ahead on it because, again, we have to raise equity in order to take and be able to do that building as well. So right now we're focusing on this, but we do have plans already drawn. Should this one fail, then we can switch right over right away. So there's not going to be a gap in time. If this happens, this becomes our focus. And then over time, then we build back with the equity on it.
Seeing no other questions, I think we can let you go and call Mayor Hibbs back in.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, we can call a 15-minute recess. Come back here at 7:35.
Thank you. We will resume our agenda. We have now moved into requests for decision. 6.1 is bylaw 400.78 amendments to the land use bylaw 400 municipal heritage inventory historic buildings list. I would invite senior development officer Kirk to the presenter table, please, to present on this item.
All right, thank you, Mayor Hibbs. And again, good evening, members of council. So yeah, the purpose of bylaw 400.78 is to amend the land use bylaw table 14.5.1. That's the municipal heritage inventory historic buildings by removing buildings that have since been elevated to designation as a municipal historic resource. And again, your recommended motions are that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.78 as presented, that council resolves to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.78 at the same meeting as second reading, and that council gives third reading to bylaw 400.78 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on this item? Or if not, to bring forward a motion? Councillor Goings.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I move that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.78 as presented, and that council resolves to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.78 at the same meeting as second reading. And
Sorry. So those are actually three separate motions.
My
So-
apologies.
So we'll just
Too
stop
eager.
at the first one, that council gives second reading to bylaw 400.78 as presented. That is moved by Councillor Goings. Do we have any, did you have comments or was there any debate on that item?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Very good. I see no further lights on, so I'll go ahead and call the question. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous. That has passed second reading. Councillor Goings, if you wish, you could go ahead and make that next motion.
Thank you, Mayor Hibbs. I was a little eager there. I move that council resolves to consider the third reading of bylaw 400.78 at the same meeting as second reading.
Very good. That, just for the public, that is a special motion we pass so that we can do a third reading at the same one as second. I don't see any further lights on, so I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. Therefore, there is that third reading motion, if somebody wishes to make it. Councillor Contenti.
Yes, I move that council gives the third reading to bylaw 400.78 as presented.
Very good. I see no further lights. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is also passed unanimously to third reading, or through third reading, rather. That would move us along in our request for decision. And again, I must declare I have a conflict of interest on this upcoming items, rather. And so for the same reason, I will step away.
At this time, we'll invite Manager Mitchell to present the request for decision.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Span and members of council. The next two agenda items I will be speaking on build on the presentation from Caris Village earlier this evening. In their presentation, Caris Village requested permission to extend the permission to phase the construction of Hare Promenade, and that the city release the deposits collected to date for the construction of Hare Promenade. Before I get into the specifics, I'd like to provide council with a brief overview of the role of developers in a growing municipality. In general, municipalities typically do not build new developments themselves. Instead, private developers plan and construct new neighborhoods in response to market demand. As part of that process, the developer is responsible for building or paying for the infrastructure needed to support that development. This includes on-site infrastructure such as local roads, sidewalks, streetlights, and underground utilities, as well as contributions to off-site infrastructure like major roads, major water and wastewater trunks, storm ponds, lift stations, reservoirs, etc., and emergency services that serve the broader area. The key principle is benefit-based and that growth pays for growth. The developer who benefits from the ability to subdivide and sell the land pays the upfront cost of the required infrastructure. Developers recover these upfront costs through the sales of buildings or lots. The construction of infrastructure is built into the market price paid by the end purchaser. This approach allows infrastructure to be delivered when and where growth occurs, without requiring the existing taxpayer to fund new growth. Once constructed, then that infrastructure is turned over to the city, which assumes ownership, operation, and long-term maintenance responsibilities. From then on, the infrastructure is paid by residents through municipal taxes. So when Caris Village originally applied to subdivide the lot for their ultimate build out, the city, and so when I say ultimate build out, I mean all phases, it was one lot they subdivided out. The city had required that they construct Hare Promenade on the north side of their parcel, as that road is needed once the full lot is developed. In 2018, Caris Village successfully presented a case to council demonstrating that the road was not required for the first several phases of construction, and requested permission to defer construction to the third apartment phase of development. They also demonstrated that the landowner to the north of the road would benefit from the construction of the road and should pay 50% of the cost. Now, one issue with deferring construction is that it makes the final phases more expensive. And if you defer too much cost, it can make finishing a project cost prohibitive. The city agreed in principle and allowed Caris Village to defer construction of the road, but we did require them to pay a deposit based on 1/6 of the cost of the road for each phase of construction. And that 1/6 came from 50% of the cost divided by 3. The intent was to collect 50% of the funds by the time construction of the road was triggered, either by Caris Village or the developer to the north. The funds would be released to whichever party triggered construction of the road first. This was to ensure that some funds would be available to help construct the road when it was triggered and keep the final phases of Caris Village from becoming cost prohibitive. As Mr. Jacobson presented earlier tonight, Caris Village has the opportunity for grant funding that necessitates them advancing to the third apartment building in favor of the second apartment building. This building requires a portion of Hare Promenade to be constructed to provide adequate access, but is sooner in their business plan than anticipated. Caris Village is requesting approval to partially construct Hare Promenade from Seanie Trail, which you can see labeled on the east there, to the Caris Village Drive access. And the reason you've got two pictures here is I didn't have a great one that showed both. So you can see the road that comes up through the middle of Caris Village and bisects it. So they basically want to make that connection so that vehicles can route up and down Seanie Trail or through Caris Village as needed. This segment is approximately 92 meters or 43% of the total road length. The remaining portion of Hare Promenade would still be built later, consistent with the original phasing intent. Berman University, the landowner to the north, has provided written confirmation that they do not object to the revised phasing and support proceeding with the partial construction at this time. This maintains the collaborative intent and the original 50-50 cost sharing approach. The city has collected just over $150,000 in phased deposits to date. As this phase of proposed construction now roughly represents 80% of the estimated total cost of the road, administration believes that it meets the intent of collecting 50% of the road cost before construction and releasing all monies and we recommend releasing all monies collected to the developer initiating the construction. So, with that said, and I didn't touch on it, but the reason it's 80% of the cost is because while they're only building 43% of the road, they are installing all of the water line and all of the sewer main and storm main. And so those underground utilities increase the cost of the road, even though the road won't be constructed over top of them. So administration recommends that council approve the amended phasing for Hare Promenade as described in the recommended motion number 1, and that council release the phased deposit following construction completion. I am happy to support council in their deliberations.
Thank you, Manager Mitchell. I'll open it up to questions or comments from council. Is someone prepared to make the motion? I did have a question about this recommended motion. It talks about releasing the deposit of the 152,000 upon completion of construction of Hare Promenade. Does that meet the spirit of what they were requesting, or were they requesting those funds prior to the completion?
I assumed that would be the answer. The city does recommend releasing them at the completion. That's typically when we release all securities. We always take deposits for construction and that kind of thing. Potentially, I'll look to my director here. There's a possibility that we could apply these towards the deposit required for the development agreement so that we're not double collecting a deposit.
Yeah, the intent here is just to secure the construction of the road, and the phase deposit scenario was intended to spread out the costs over each development phase, and that those deposits were made over as the development proceeded through time. They're at a position where they want to develop the road today or need to develop the road today, and they're requesting the release of that deposit. In the spirit of the original arrangement was that they would be released upon completion. And so we've just maintained that through this motion. It is within council's purview to adjust that, to remove that upon completion of the construction of Hare Promenade, if you so choose. It just means that you're releasing money without, well, you're releasing money on the goodwill that it will be completed by this group, rather than after the road's already done.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Councillor DeBresser.
Thanks. I'll make the first motion if council's amenable. Do I get to read it all out? Awesome. The council approved the following amendment to the phase construction of Hare Promenade and the associated municipal utility mains along the frontage of Charis Village parcel. A, the segment from CNE Trail to the north entrance of Charis Village Drive shall be constructed by Charis Village at their cost. B, the remaining segment from Charis Village Drive to the west limit of Charis Village parcel shall be constructed either by Charis Village or a future land developer, depending on which of the following conditions is triggered first. 1, Charis Village, the development of the third apartment type building or future land development, the city and a developer enter into a development agreement acquiring access to Hare Promenade.
Great job. Any other comments or questions on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. Please vote. We have 6 votes for and none against. That motion will pass. Then looking at the second motion, do we have any discussion on releasing the deposit? Or is someone willing to make that motion?
I can make the motion. That council authorize the release of the deposit of $152,960.70 to Caris Village upon the completion of construction of Hare Promenade from CNE Trail to the north entrance of Caris Village Drive as proposed.
Any further discussion on that motion? My only comment would be to Director Thompson about, you had mentioned taking that deposit twice. Is there a way to make it so that that doesn't need to happen?
The deposit for Hare Promenade was identified for a specific purpose of securing the construction of Hare Promenade. The deposit that we would take over the course of a normal development approval process is to secure the conditions that the development will occur according to the conditions outlined in the development permit. So they do have separate purposes. Certainly, if upon the submission of a development permit, this developer wished for council to consider a relaxation of deposits of some kind or securities related to that specific development, I would recommend that that be considered kind of separate on its own merits at the time of development or just prior to development, and then council can consider these two things separately and on their own merits, rather than trying to blend them here on the fly tonight.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Seeing no other questions or comments, I'll call for the question. Please vote. We have 6 votes for, none against. It's unanimous. That motion will pass. And we'll move on to the next request for decision to be presented by Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Span. My second item on the agenda tonight addresses the Caris Village request for aid with water and sewer servicing. Regarding wastewater, Caris Village made 2 requests. I've paraphrased them based on the letter appended to this report and further discussions with Mr. Jacobson. The first request is that the city commit to completing the Area 12 lift station, and I have here in 2028, as that was some of our earlier discussions. In his presentation today, he said as early as December of 2027. This commitment will allow Caris Village to avoid $100,000 in relocation and upgrade costs to the interim lift station. Request number 2 is that the city assume ownership of the Caris Village interim lift station. Before getting into specifics on the request, I'd like to give you a brief overview of what a lift station is and how it works. A gravity sewer system relies on the natural slope to move wastewater. Sewer pipes are laid at a slight downward grade so that sewage flows by gravity from homes and businesses to large sewer mains and eventually to a treatment facility, or in the case of the city of Lacombe, a regional lift station that pumps the sewage to Red Deer for treatment. Lift stations are used when gravity flow isn't possible, such as in flat areas, low-lying developments, or when you're far enough away from the treatment facility that you can no longer lay a pipe on a slope and still achieve sufficient cover to prevent the pipe from freezing. Wastewater flows by gravity into a wet well where pumps lift the sewage to a higher elevation so that it can continue flowing downstream. As Caris Village expands northward, the site topography no longer allows for a gravity-fed sanitary service. Because of this elevation constraint, a lift station is required to support continued development. To allow the next phase of development to proceed, Caris Village designed and constructed a temporary expandable lift station. This was for those 4 duplexes that made up the 8 units. And it would also serve as Mr. Jacobson mentioned, the second apartment building, but in its current location cannot service the third. This lift station was always intended as an interim solution to be used until the city constructed the permanent Area 12 lift station. Caris Village has already invested $160,000 into this lift station, and they would require an additional $100,000 to upgrade and relocate the lift station to support the third apartment building, the continuing care building. Caris's first request is that the city advance construction of the permanent Area 12 lift station so it is completed by 2028. The Area 12 lift station and sanitary force main will serve both Caris Village and the broader Hunnards Heights area development. This infrastructure is already identified as eligible in off-site infrastructure under the city's off-site levy bylaw. For those of you who are not as familiar with off-site levies, they are one-time charges collected by a municipality from developers to help pay for major infrastructure needed to support new development. When land is developed, it creates a demand for things like roads, water and wastewater systems, stormwater facilities, reservoirs, pump stations, fire halls, etc. These facilities are often located outside of the specific development area itself, but they are still required to service it. Off-site levies ensure the cost of this growth-related infrastructure is shared fairly by new development, rather than being paid entirely by existing taxpayers. Levies are calculated based on the developable size of the parcel, and a per hectare rate is set in advance through an off-site levy bylaw, which is supported by detailed infrastructure studies. The money collected through off-site levies is placed into dedicated reserves funds. These funds can only be used for that specific infrastructure and areas that are identified within the bylaw. This ensures transparency, accountability, and that the money collected from growth is actually reinvested into growth-related capital projects. Updating the off-site levy bylaw is a major undertaking, and the MGA requires good faith consultation with the development community. Combined with provincial legislative changes affecting off-site levies proposed in April 2026 under Bill 28, it is not recommended to revisit the bylaw at this time. We believe a bigger update will be required in the not too distant future. The off-site levy funded lift station is currently scheduled to begin construction in 2028 with completion in 2029. To allow Caris Village to avoid the $100,000 upgrade and relocation costs, the lift station would need to be fully operational in 2028, not 2029. Preliminary cost estimates indicate that the lift station may cost between $1.5 and $2 million, which is higher than the current budget allocation. However, administration's review indicates that the Area 12 facility can be sized to service a much larger catchment area, which will eliminate the need to construct a future Area 14A lift station, resulting in long-term cost avoidance. Detailed design has already begun, which will provide a more accurate cost estimate. This refined estimate will inform Council's 2027 capital budget deliberations. If Council wishes to commit to completion by 2028, funding would need to be approved in the 2027 capital budget to allow sufficient time for tendering and construction. In regard to the temporary lift station already constructed by Caris Village, administration does not recommend that the city assume ownership. This facility was constructed by Caris Village for interim servicing with the explicit understanding that it would not become a city-owned asset. As a result, the lift station was not required to meet our municipal design and construction standards, and the city did not inspect, approve, or accept the station according to city standards. Caris Village's next two requests are related to water servicing. They request that the city provide at full or partial cost an adequate water main for looping purposes, and or that the city cost share for basic water and sewer servicing in Caris Village. Again, I'll address the requests in order. Caris Village requires a looped water supply to safely support both existing residents and the proposed continuing care facility. Water looping is created when a building is serviced from two directions, and it is essential to maintain water quality, firefighting pressures, and operational reliability. For example, if a water main break were to occur on the south, the area can continue to be supplied by water from the north. To achieve the necessary looping, there are two feasible options. The first is the construction of a water loop around the north side of Henner's Pond. This will go in, which would go in well ahead of development of the rest of the area. It is not unusual for the city to install trunk infrastructure ahead of development. In 2012, water and sanitary trunks were installed to support the development of Metcalf Ridge on the east side of town. And some development has occurred, but the area is definitely not fully built out. In 2018, water, sanitary, and a lift station were constructed in Midway Center to enable west side growth. For the Caris Village situation, this option involves pre-building the fully offsite levy funded water main identified in offsite levy bylaw 509, which is intended to loop the city's north water distribution system and support Caris Village and open up Hunters Heights for future development. That alignment is shown in green on the image above. Completion of this trunk main would provide long-term looping for Caris Village and Hunters Heights, which significantly reduces complexity for future developers. It avoids the need for Caris Village to construct temporary interim water loop at a cost of $300,000 to $400,000, and it improves system reliability for the broader Northeast sector. It meets the long-term hydraulic modeling expectations for the city's future growth scenarios. Caris Village has also proposed an alternative loop that follows the north shore of Henner's Pond, utilizing Hare Promenade. This is shown in pink. This alignment administration will consider with the next offsite levy bylaw update, as we do feel there are several advantages. However, since it is not a specified project under the identified offsite levy bylaw today, it cannot be funded through offsite levy bylaws or offsite levies. Although both these options are viable in the long term, administration does not recommend constructing the major Henner Heights water loop at this time for several reasons. First, the city does not own the land and would have to obtain a right-of-way, which otherwise would be dedicated at no cost to the city if if the Henner Heights development was driving the project. The water main is sized and designed for the full area build-out, not a single apartment building. Advancing it decades early introduces premature wear, resulting in the need for earlier replacement. Also, until significant development occurs, water turnover in the trunk will be minimal. Low water flow turnover requires frequent flushing and higher O&M costs to avoid stagnation. Next, water mains are most cost-effective when they're installed concurrently with adjacent deep utilities such as storm or sanitary sewer. Installing it now would require future contractors to work around a live water trunk, increasing the complexity, risk, and cost of future utility installations. And finally, this limits the future flexibility as the surrounding lands have not yet been developed or subdivided, and the desired alignments could change over time. I also want to encourage council to consider whether they want to support new development in 3 directions. We already have a bunch in the east. Now we have a bunch in the west out at Midway Center, and this would be the north. Or if you want to focus on areas where investment has already been made. And again, that's a strategic decision. The second option is to create looping that is connected to the existing water main in Ave Street. Caris provided 2 versions of this request in the letter, as illustrated on the images above. The recommended option is the second one, and that's that Ave Street is connected to Hare Promenade for an estimated cost of $375,000. The reason administration recommends this alignment over the other is that this one could create some temporary looping for the early phases of Hunters Heights to the north of this development. Therefore, it would benefit more than one specific developer. In the long term, once the offsite levy funded water main is installed, both options will become redundant. Neither of these routes are eligible under offsite levy bylaw 509, so offsite levy funds cannot be applied. And this is what CAO Gowdy was talking about when saying it's not really double dipping. It's building a piece of infrastructure that's temporary to allow you to advance your construction ahead of the city's plans. Administration recognizes that both Caris Village and future development in the surrounding area would benefit from these works temporarily. A city contribution of 50% up to $250,000 would represent a strategic economic development infrastructure investment supporting both seniors housing development and the broader future growth of the Hunters Heights area. Regardless of whether council elects to participate in cost sharing for the Ave Street loop or not, administration does support Caris Village using the Ave Street road allowance for constructing this water main. With that, I will summarize administration's recommendations. in the following motions. One, that council commit to completion of the Area 12 sanitary lift station in 2028. And I'll put a little caveat on here. When I'm saying 2028, the reason I'm asking for 2028 is some contractors like to, the lift station will be very, very close to Henner's Pond. Some contractors like to do that kind of construction in winter conditions when it's frozen. So 2028 would allow us to have the first quarter of 2028 to do that work in winter conditions. I'm not talking about the end of 2028. I am talking about relatively early in 2028 when we'd be able to bring that lift station online. So I do believe it would still align fairly well with Karis's goal of having, you know, the building move-in ready by the end of 2027 and maybe within a few months. So to align with Karis Village's development timeline for their Phase 1C apartment building containing approximately 100 to 150 continuing care units. And the second motion is that council approve a city contribution of 50% up to $250,000 funded from the general capital reserves to build the Ab Street Waterline Loop as a strategic economic development infrastructure investment supporting both seniors housing development and broader future growth in the Henners Heights area. Now, please note that I have altered the second motion in the slide deck to provide clarification as to where the funding is coming from. It's in bold there. And this is the preferred wording for this motion today, if you choose to make it. And with that, I'm happy to support council in their deliberations.
Thank you, Manager Mitchell. There was a lot there. I'd invite questions or comments from council or administration. Councillor Contenti.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin. So I just wanted, let's deal with for me, with the pump station. There's an existing temporary pump station that Terrace built themselves. The city had nothing to do with. We're possibly looking at, maybe it might meet the requirements of the city thing, but that's what was in here. But what did it say? That you have an engineer looking at the possibility. So, but in the presenter's presentation said something about the temporary lift station could be moved and still be adequate to service this expansion. Is that?
That's correct. Through a Deputy Mayor Span to Councillor Contenti. Sorry, that's a mouthful. Yes, our recommendation is not to take over the lift station in its entirety. However, we are asking our engineers to take a look at whether or not some of the components can be reused. Again, the city builds our lift stations to minimize confined space entry, for safety of workers. There's, you know, a number of criteria that we go through. And when we looked at it, this temporary lift station is not something that we want our owners or our operators necessarily to be owning and operating. However, there may be components that we could reuse. And so there's potential that we could review it for that use. But Karis Village did design this to be able to be moved and used for the next one. However, it will cost an additional $100,000 for them to be able to do it. So right now where they've installed it, it's in a location where it will service the 4 duplexes they're installing now, as well as the next independent living building, which was what, when they installed it, that was what they believed the next step was. It was before the grant funding was announced. When the grant funding was announced, they realized the opportunity there, and they recognized that they would have to move that lift station to be able to accommodate this next building.
Okay, just follow up to that. So if they moved that on their own expense and used it, and the city decide later to redo it and put in lift 12, that would all have to be dug up. It wouldn't be reusable type thing. Would we have to dig up roads and all that again type thing? Is that
correct?
Am I assuming that correctly? So that's why your recommendation is that we go ahead with 12 for 28 so that we can avoid that kind of temporary installation, dig up and redo again.
Correct. It's something that the administration already identified in the 10-year capital plan. We didn't we didn't foresee this building being skipped either, but we did foresee in the near future that Caris Village would be building this next phase. And as they had already put that temporary one in, we knew it wasn't, we didn't think it was needed
Right.
for the next phase, but because they're leapfrogging, it is coming sooner. So had the grant funding not come up, we would have continued on. We would have budgeted for 2028. If Caris Village had no plans to construct in 2028, we probably would have pushed it to 2029 in the budget and just kind of kept pushing it until Caris Village made an indication that they were ready to start with that third apartment building. However, because that is being advanced earlier, we are recommending moving it up in the budget to help meet their timelines.
Okay. One more?
Go for it.
So if we do this work now for 12, is the water line going to be in that same ditch?
That's a great question. So could I get the slide back up? So there is so you can kind of see the road alignment along here, and there's a water line and then what we call a force main and a gravity main. So what happens right now is kind of where the parking lot is in the road, just kind of at the north end of where all those fourplexes end. You see how that road loop ends? That's where that temporary lift station is located. South of that, there is a gravity sewer that flows into the rest of town. And so everything flows there. There will be another gravity sewer that will start going north. And the new lift station will be located in that same parcel where the storm pond is. And so when that water line is constructed in Air Promenade, they will be putting in a force main, a gravity main, and a water main. So those will all be installed at the same time.
Thank you.
Councillor DeBresser?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, through Deputy Mayor Span, it's good to say. Will the city need to be borrowing the money for the offsite levy for the actual project? Sorry. Do we have enough in the offsite levy reserves under the sanitary to pay for this, or will we be having to borrow in future years? And I'm going to follow up as well.
CEO Gowdy.
So the only project that is eligible for offsite levy funding, just to be clear, is the Area 12 lift station. I don't have the exact balances. I'm pretty confident that we will be borrowing money for the lift station. I did just want to address the lift station build quality. It's not that we want to denigrate the quality of the lift station that exists, or that it's like, oh, they cheaped out. It's more like someone bought a space heater for an area which does heat space, but it's not the same as a furnace. It's a totally different thing. And so our lift station, you know, obviously this is a CSA approved lift station that they've put in. It meets all the standards, but it is it's not a municipally scaled thing. Ours will be 10 times the cost, and it is about operating costs. It's about risk assessment and resilience for if there's failures, that kind of thing. So it's not that they've put in some sort of substandard lift station. It's just that it's not fit for purpose for servicing a large municipal area. And do you have the answer?
It is debt. That's correct. That is the proposed funding source is debt.
Just to follow up, knowing that things are getting more expensive every year, we're talking about a 2028 construction. Would administration want an approval earlier than that, move up the tender sooner and lock in construction in maybe 2027? I know time-wise, 2028. However, if we can tender it in for construction, may result in better prices if we lock it in instead of locking it in the year prior, if that makes sense.
So I think our intention is with council's endorsement or commitment to the 2028 construction completion timeline, that we would proceed from where we are today through completing detailed design, and then based on the latest and greatest cost estimates from our engineers, incorporate those into the 2027 budget cycle, and then be ready to tender right away in 2027 for possible construction completion by the end of 2027, early 2028.
So that would be our timeline. It seems from our perspective to line up relatively well based on the progress of the engineering to date with our current budget cycles anyway. And so our intention was just to align with that moving forward. But certainly if we do find that we're progressing much quicker and we're able to perhaps get a leg up on the fall of 2026 or something, we can take that under consideration and bring back a recommendation to council.
Through to administration, what was the budgeted amount for this project that we had for 2026 and 2027?
Director Thompson will have it pulled up on a screen momentarily here for Manager Mitchell. But I believe
I don't know the precise dollar value, 600 and something thousand. 660?
$660,000.
Oh, follow-up question on that. For the Area 14A lift station, was that being planned for as well? Were there being contributions put into reserves for that lift station?
That lift station is also identified in the offsite levy bylaw, and so offsite levies would have been collected for it. However, none of the area directly impacted by that has applied for development yet, so we haven't collected any of the funds to construct that particular lift station.
If that lift station is not going ahead, are we able to use those levies towards Area 12?
That would be the intention when we do the next revision of the offsite levy bylaw, is we would remove the Area 14 lift station and increase the price of the Area 12 lift station. And the hope is that those would somewhat offset each other so that you don't see a major change in the rates for those areas.
Any further questions? Oh, CAO Gowdy.
Sorry, I just want to follow up on Director Thompson's the cost, the estimate. So I said that it was going to be 10 times 150,000 for our lift station, but you said 660,000 has been identified in the budget, in the capital budget. So help me reconcile that for council. What was the cost of our most recent lift station?
That's a great question. The most recent lift station was 4.8 million, something like that. The current lift station is a different design. It's what we call a prepackaged lift station versus a dedicated build. So that also helps our timelines for construction in that it is actually constructed off-site, and it is brought in on a truck and it is dropped into place through excavation. So it's a 2 months for them to build it off-site. They can do that under controlled conditions. And when they bring it in, again, it'll depend on the contractor and whether they want to do that in frozen conditions or summer conditions. Summer conditions would probably require pumping. Frozen conditions, you're working in frozen conditions. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both, but we've been told that's like in the 5 to 6 week construction window for installing that lift station. And then of course you've got to construct the force main and all the connections and such. So it's something that we do feel is achievable, like I said, by like Q1 of 2028, if we are given the budget in the 2027 budget to work with.
And just for further clarification, it seems to me like this Area 12 lift station was being planned for already 2029. So really the only thing we're doing is doing construction of it a year or two sooner. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're just moving up 1 year. It was planned to start in 2028 to be completed in 2029, and we're asking to start in 2027 to be completed in 2028. And I feel like I perhaps didn't answer CAO Gowdy's full question in that he asked about the 10 times the rates. You're actually quite correct with the 10 times the rate. So their initial one was 160,000, and our initial estimates for this lift station are $1.5 to $2 million, which is right bang on with your 10 times the amount. The budgeted amount came out of a very high level a sanitary sewer master plan report that was done in 2020. There hadn't been any cost escalations since, and it did not include things like a generator, which our utilities department has said, you know, if this area is servicing an area this big, they want a purpose-built generator for that site. So there were a number of factors that just hadn't been considered until we hopped into detailed design. So partially it was underestimated, and partially it wasn't fully spec'd out when the pricing was provided in that high-level study. Does that adequately answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And my purpose wasn't to be right. It was to highlight, well, I said 10 times and then we immediately said the budget was only 5 times. So thanks.
It's just a side perk. Councillor DeBrusser.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So my other question is about the waterline looping. You recommended the general capital reserve. Can you help me understand why the water reserve wouldn't be used in this instance?
Either could be used. I think an argument could be made either way. The one rationale being that this is a investment in infrastructure. It could have been anything. This is an enabling investment into a development that of capital that will contribute to the city of Lacombe, and that the general capital reserve is meant to reflect kind of the supportive nature of the investment. On the other hand, the water reserve or contribution from the water reserve would reflect the fact that this is a water line, and it could be accounted for that way. Either way, it is acceptable. There isn't a right and wrong in this case. Certainly, we like to have the water line investments be reflected in the utility rates on the backside. So if we're investing in the water line out of the water reserve, then the benefit is to the utility customer, the water utility customer. The contribution that we're talking about today, I think you can argue, is on the basis of jobs and perhaps enabling further development or unlocking further development north of Caris Village. And for those reasons, that is more of an economic development kind of supportive type investment, which is generally tax supported rather than utility supported investment.
Councillor Contenti.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Just a question. So this water line that you're proposing from AB Street to loop in, this will handle everything, including some future development. So we won't have to redo that line later, to my understanding. And then it will tie into the future line that'll go around Henders Pond. And then basically we've got a loop coming like this. And I completely understand why we're not going around Henders Pond, because I am a plumber. I understand all these things. And so, yeah, to do that now would be degrading the water line. We'd have to flush. We'd have to do a lot of things. So it makes more sense for sure to do what you're proposing. But I was just wanting to know, so then later that line could be tied into that big loop.
So
in the green. The green loop. Yes.
Correct.
Manager Mitchell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Span. Sorry not to cut you off, Councillor Contenti. You're partially correct in that water main would come up. It's kind of showed right now as a dark blue stubbed up Ab Street. It would go straight north, kind of around the storm pot and connect in there. And that would provide looping for the village. You can also build loops off of that by building kind of I call it phase 1. So I see if I think it's Hummel Street. So if you put in the water line that shows going up Hummel Street, and you can loop that around, and then you can develop that whole area within there. Water modeling has not been completed to confirm this, but based on the size of the water line, I anticipate that should work. So that's why we're saying it does provide, some future phasing. At some point, you're either going to be fully constructing the pink line or the green line. And once that line is complete, that initial water line will become redundant. That one off of Ab Street that we're talking about building today, it's no longer needed. There's no direct services coming off of it. And so when that water line reaches the end of its life, it's unlikely that we'll need to replace it. Well, in all likelihood, it will be abandoned in place and will cease to maintain it.
Okay, just follow up to that. What time frame are you talking about for the purple and the green? Are we talking based on development, based on?
It's based on development. Administration's best estimate right now is we're looking at 40+ years out before we start looking at any of those homes developing around the north end of Henner's Pond. That said, if the water line was there, it could happen a lot sooner. And that's where I'm talking about having development in 3 different directions. Right now, we've got Metcalf and Mackenzie. We've got out on the west side, we've got some residential and commercial out there. And so then the question becomes, if we open this one here, then you've got 3 sides of town that are all have potential for development, and they're probably all going to get picked at a little bit. And in the interim, all of that infrastructure that we've installed is going to be aging before it reaches its full capacity. And so that's where I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong answer. There's some strategic things for council to consider, and maybe in your discussions coming up as to how you want to treat requests like this. This probably won't be the only one that comes in your term to support future development. So just something to think about. There's not, like I said, there's not a right or a wrong answer.
Good, thank you. And I hope we have development in 4 directions, to tell you the truth. So thank you for that.
I'd like to bring things back to the lift station. We do have a recommended motion on the in our package. Is anyone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Contenti?
I move that council commits to the completion of Area 12 sanitary sewer lift station in 2028 to align with Sheriff's Village development timeline for their Phase 1C apartment building containing approximately 100 to 150 continuing care units.
Manager Mitchell, did you have any further questions or comments on this motion? And then I will call for the question. Please vote. We have a unanimous vote. That motion will pass. And then moving on to the water line loop. Are there any other questions on that item? One question I had was, do we have any idea of the cost difference between building the green line versus the purple line?
We don't have recent cost estimates. I know that the engineers for Caris Village, I think, put together a cost estimate, very high level for the pink line, and it was in that $800,000 to $1 million range. The green line, I don't have anything recent to compare that to. So.
Councillor DeBresser?
Yeah, I'm just prepared to make the next motion if we can bring it up on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I move that council approves the city contribution of 50% up to $250,000 funded from the general capital reserve to build the Arb Street water line loop as a strategic economic development infrastructure investment, supporting both seniors housing development and broader future growth in Henners Heights area.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on that item? Then I will call for the question. Please vote. Voting is unanimous. That item passes.
Yeah. Put a little space in your back.
Okay. So we resume with our last request for decision, item 6.4, 2026 property tax bylaw 534 and special paving tax bylaw 535 for first and second reading. Director Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor Hibbs. Today I'm presenting the 2026 property tax bylaw and special paving tax bylaw, first and second reading. These bylaws are required annually under the Municipal Government Act to allow the city to levy and collect property taxes. Approval and subsequent third reading at the next meeting will enable administration to issue tax notices in May with a payment deadline of June 30th. Administration is also recommending the budget adjustments outlined in Table 4 in the Council report to align the tax bylaw with actual assessment growth and updated third-party requisition amounts from for Alberta Education, designated industrial properties, and the Lacombe Foundation, which the city receives early in the year, in this case in 2026, after the city's budget is passed. The municipal levy portion supports local City of Lacombe tax services. The provincial education and designated industrial levies are remitted directly to the province, and the Lacombe Foundation levy is remitted to the Lacombe Foundation for Public Seniors Housing. Assessment growth has come in slightly higher than anticipated and accounted for in the budget. This results in an approximately $100,000 in additional municipal tax revenue in 2026. Administration is recommending that this additional revenue be transferred to the General Capital Reserve. Bylaw 534 is proposed for first and second reading tonight. This establishes the municipal tax rates required to implement the 1.3% tax increase approved by Council in the adoption of the 2026 budget, as well as the tax rates to collect the required third-party requisitions the city must remit on the province's and Lacombe Foundation's behalf. Bylaw 535 applies the annual special paving tax set at 1% of the prior year's municipal tax to partially fund paving on Wolf Creek Drive. A special paving tax has been implemented annually since 2022, provides a consistent and predictable funding source for road rehabilitation. In 2026, it is expected to generate $192,000, which I said will be directed to pavement rehabilitation on Wolf Creek Drive this year. Together, these two bylaws generate approximately $27.5 million in total tax revenue, $20.2 million for municipal purposes, and about $7.3 million for third-party requisitions. For a typical residential property, the total tax bill increase, including the municipal and third-party requisitions, is approximately 5.2%. For typical non-residential property, the increase is approximately 6.5%. In summary, there are three decisions before Council today. First, whether to approve the proposed budget adjustments, including adjustments to third-party requisitions and the allocation of additional municipal tax revenue to the General Capital Reserve. Second, whether to give first and second reading to bylaw 534, and third, whether to give first and second reading to bylaw 535. Council, I'm happy to support you in your deliberations.
Thank you. I will just point out that this is an unusual circumstance where we're being asked to do first reading in the regular part of the agenda. If it's clear, I won't bother explaining further beyond that. So that is why you see that. But of course, prior to that, it's the budget changes in table 4 that are being asked for. So if we could limit our discussion or questions to that item first, just to keep it relatively in order, if that's all right with everybody. Does anybody have any questions in regards to table 4? It's essentially just a restatement of what the actual reality is. If someone's prepared to make that motion, that would be fantastic. Councillor De Bresser.
Yep, I just have a comment, and it's concerning table 4 and the allocation to the general capital reserve. I'm happy to see municipal revenue, new revenue coming in over budget, which is fantastic. On one hand, we're going to put that into general capital reserve, all good there. And then later, we're going to give first reading of the pavement tax, which is essentially taxing again. So I want to amend table 4, if council's agreeable, that I've got an amending motion, but it doesn't include the provincial requisition here. So we might have to work on the fly here, but I want to move the council direct the excess revenue of 104,832, along with 87,186 from the general capital reserve, totaling 192,000, be directed towards a paving of Wolf Creek Drive in lieu of the special pavement tax. And that's the motion, and I'm open to any questions there. So what I'm essentially doing is taking the excess revenue that we didn't have budgeted, offsetting the special pavement tax, and hopefully defeat the first reading of the bylaw for the special pavement tax. So our municipal requisition, or our municipal tax rate increase this year would be that 1.3%. So that's what I'm asking council for.
Councillor Span.
Sorry.
CEO Gowdy.
So I just want to make sure that we're of the same mind here, Councillor De Bresser, that the proposed change, what you've proposed here is essentially in table 4, rather than an increase of 104,832 to the general capital reserve, the transfer to the general capital reserve, sorry, rather than that reduction, or sorry, increase, you would propose a reduction of approximately 88,000 to the transfer to the general capital reserve.
It would be the allocation, instead of going to the general capital, into the streets reserve for the purpose of paving. Similar to when the pavement tax comes in, it gets allocated to the streets reserve. I combined the two to make up the $192,000 that's reflected in the bylaw. So it wouldn't be a reduction, it would be a reallocation from the general capital 2 times. One, the excess revenue of 104,000 and the additional 87,000 to make up that the 192, if that's clear.
So the loss of 192 in revenue would be balanced by a combination of the new assessment plus a withdrawal from the general capital reserve. I just want to confirm, because we have approved, council has approved a $250,000 withdrawal from the general capital reserve moments ago. What is the reserve balance?
I'll just need a moment to look that up.
Councillor Dyksdag.
Did I hear you right to say you wanted it spent on paving Wolf Creek Drive? And why Wolf Creek Drive versus another area of town? Why have you identified that's where it should go?
Yeah, so bylaw 535, if I'm reading correctly, is the special pavement tax.
Yep.
And the special pavement tax has identified Wolf Creek Drive between 52nd and 55th Ave, or something around that. So essentially, we are funding that project, but not through the special pavement tax.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sorry for the pause, but I do actually really want the answer to that question about what our reserves sit at. CEO Gowdy.
Maybe just while Director Thompson is looking at it, we talked about this very thing. We anticipated that there may be a desire to either lower the overall tax increase or lower or eliminate the paving tax. That is certainly council's prerogative, and it's not going to be a catastrophic thing to do so. However, I would also say you do not have enough money right now to deliver your 10-year priority list, and you rely on debt funding that exceeds your increase to tax policy that limits it to CPI. Given that you're at the front end of a term, there is a number of opportunities remaining for you to make changes like this as you have more clarity in your priorities. And so we're a naturally cautious bunch. I'm sure you're already aware that there's a natural push-pull between the conservatives sort of like, well, you should get any money anytime you can get it, with, well, yeah, but we're getting it from ourselves, and so we don't want to take more than we need. So our recommendation remains the same, but certainly it's a rational, logical, defensible position that Councillor DeBresser has put forward.
Director Thompson.
Thank you for your patience as I navigated our system to find the answer. The opening balance for the general reserve, I believe, is $686,000 in 2026. So if we factor in an earlier commitment from council for related to the spray park, it was $110,000. We factor in the commitment to tonight, $250,000, and we factor in $80 from tonight. Should council choose to pass that, or the balance of the reserve would be $240,000.
Councillor Span.
Through Mayor Hibbs to Director Thompson, what's the amount that we contribute to that reserve every year? Need a minute?
I would need a minute. Thank you.
CEO Gowdy.
So again, just to buy some time for Director Thompson, the way that you're set how much you contribute in any given year is that you would take the total 10-year expenditures out of that are projected out of the general capital reserve, divide by 10. So when I look at our existing budget, I'm guessing you are, well, I don't need to guess and then be proven wrong immediately. I'll just wait rather than risk putting my foot in my mouth.
Give it a shot. Come on.
I have a number. I'll tell you whether it was close after he says it.
Councillor Contenti.
Can I make a comment on?
Sure.
Councillor DeBresser? So I'm okay with moving that 104 into the, using it for the roads, for the pavement. But I'm not really in favor of taking another 80-some thousand out of the reserve for that. We've already approved some tax for paving. So my thought it would be, okay, use that 108 and then still take the remaining, whatever it be, 0.6% or 0.59%, whatever it is, and use that to make up the difference of the 80 some thousand. Does that make sense to administration?
Councillor DeBresser.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments. We've adopted a 10-year capital budget, and early on in my term, I said we needed more time with that budget. We had 2 days, pretty much 2 days with the budget binder into workshops. To me, we haven't fully vetted everything in that 10-year capital, so our contribution is an average of divided by 10. So I'm not confident in that number, whether it's high or low. However, I can amend my motion to pull out of the streets reserve if there's more money in that. And I wish I had have asked the clarifying question on how much is in our general capital reserve before making the motion on the water line. And that was my intent of that. Felt that there was enough money in the general capital for that project to be resolved. I think that motion's gone. We can't revert back to pull that from the water reserve to free up some money there. But yeah, no, I'm happy with either reserve. If the streets reserve, where it generally sits, comes out to pay for that extra 87,000, I'm happy with that. Or if you want to tap the general capital for that 87,000, I'm happy to amend my motion if so wish.
It would be a little unusual to amend your own motion, but perhaps Councillor Contenti would like to put forward an amending motion to remove the additional withdrawal from the roads, or well, from the capital reserve, sorry. And we would then debate that.
I would like to do that. Whatever that means, what do I know?
Coordinator Post?
I didn't know we have official.
I thought.
Motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the amending motion, just for clarity, you're looking to not state that the 87,000 is coming from the general capital reserve, but instead coming from
The paving road.
the roads reserve? The road
What is it
reserve.
called?
The roads reserve.
The roads reserve. Okay, so the amending motion put forward by Councillor Contenti would be to amend the main motion to state that council direct the excess revenue of $104,832 along with $87,168 from the roads reserve totaling $192,000 be directed towards the paving of Wolf Creek Drive in lieu of the special paving tax.
No,
Okay,
sorry.
please clarify.
No, I wanted the extra to come out of the paving tax that we've already, so instead of 1.1%, be 0.59% or whatever, that difference of 89 versus what it originally would be.
So clarification, there would not be an extra top up, then it would just be the 104. That's an overage of what we collected, and that's it. And that would be put against the 1%. So whatever is left over, then that would be the appropriate percentage.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
is that clear, CAO Gowdy?
It is. It's clear what you want to accomplish. I'm gonna need a minute to draft the amending motion. I'm gonna come up with it while Director Thompson answers our earlier questions, if that's possible.
Director Thompson.
So thank you for that, and thank you for your patience, as I just not familiar with some parts of our budgeting software. And so for the general capital reserve contribution annually in the last 3 years, it's about $1.1 million a year we put into the general capital reserve. And so the balance that I had described earlier was the opening balance for 2026. So I think you'd be right to consider that $1.1 million contribution this year over and above the $250,000 number. But as CO Gowdy had highlighted, is when we look at the whole 10-year capital plan and looking at funding it, we're trying our best to optimize funding sources from all the different reserves and debt funding as well. And so, yeah, so that's the answer. $1.1 million is the contribution into the general capital reserve.
Annually.
Councillor Span.
Through Mayor Hibbs to Councillor Contenti, just a question, why would you prefer to see it on the tax rather than coming from something like the roads reserve? Do you have an objection to pulling it from there?
Well, there's only one tax, really. There's only one taxpayer. It just, I'm more in the conservative. I'd like to keep our balances up rather than being that tight, like 250. But now that I've heard we are going to be increasing it, it's not that important. The only thing I didn't quite understand was the road tax reserve or the tax reserve versus the special tax that we had. If I could explain that, please.
There is no special tax reserve. There is only the roads reserve. Well, there's a roads reserve, but the one we're talking about is a roads reserve. And you put contributions in there in any given year, both from the special paving tax, potentially, although actually I shouldn't even say it goes in there. It is raised to raise a specific to fund a specific project that year. So the special paving tax really is not connected to the roads reserve.
Okay.
It's just a revenue source. It doesn't get transferred into the reserve.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that I understand your amending motion, and I'm trying to.
Which it's going to change, so.
Okay.
I'm going back to the one that originally had where you said comes out of the tax road reserve. That makes more sense. And then we would cancel that 1% special paving tax.
So cancel the special paving tax altogether. So I believe that is what Councillor DeBresser has put forward with the small change of you had spoken to the general capital reserve. We're now saying the roads reserve.
Yes.
Is that yes?
The general reserve.
Sorry for all the confusion. I just wanted to make sure I understood exactly and that the rest of the council did as well. So thank you.
Oh. Yeah, we're getting close. All right. We're just noticing that we're getting close to 9 o'clock. So we do have a motion on the floor. It's now an amended motion. So we'll proceed with that vote unless there's anything further. Sorry, CEO Gowdy. No?
Yeah, I just need some time unless you have the motion ready. Or do you have the motion? Did you possibly write it down ahead of time? Okay.
I do have the main motion that Councillor DeBresser has sent. And I also have the start of the amending motion that we started with Councillor Contenti. I believe the current motion that is active right now is Councillor DeBresser's first main motion. And were we reverting back to the first one I read to you? And if I may read it again, we can make an adjustment if I'm not catching it right. To amend the main motion to state that council direct the excess revenue of $104,832 along with $87,168 from the roads reserve totaling $192,000 be directed towards the paving of Wolf Creek Drive in lieu of the special paving tax.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. So that is an amending motion so that the success or failure of this does not, we then have to revert back to a main motion, which will be amended or not amended depending on the outcome of this vote. So just so we're clear, I don't see any further, legislative coordinator Post, did you have something additional? I assume that the amended motion is ready. I just can't see it scrolling through on my display. Assuming that it is correct and that the amending motion is as Councillor Contenti has read out and supported, I don't see any further lights on, so I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is unanimous, so that the amendment has passed. So now we have to go back to the main motion, which has now been amended. So essentially we'd be voting on the same motion again. Are there any further comments or questions on this item? I can't imagine there would be. Once it comes up on our machines, then we'll go ahead and proceed on that main motion. I believe it is now ready to go. I'll go ahead and call a question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. So that has just made the change for table 4. We still do need to give readings to the bylaws. Yes, or sorry, bylaw. Yes. I caught that as soon as I said the yes, and I'm like, so we will only then be considering bylaw 534, as we do not need 535, correct? Anybody wish to make that first reading? Because technically we don't debate something until it's passed first reading and on to second. Councillor Dykeslag.
I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 534.
And barring any clarification, we will just typically go to a vote on that, and that we will have more of fulsome discussion as after second reading. So I will just go ahead and call the question on first reading. Please vote. And that has passed unanimously. Did we have any questions or somebody prepared to make second reading on 534, bylaw 534? Councillor DeBresser.
Yeah, I move that council give second reading to bylaw 534.
I see no further comment on that one. I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is unanimous. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hibbs. Is it timely, is council, I'm sorry, is administration okay with the timelines, bringing back this for the next meeting to get tax notices out, generally the first week of May? It's a really good bylaw, 1.3%. I don't think we can do any better than that. If council is agreeable, I know ramming 3 readings of a bylaw like this is not recommended. However, looking to administration, would it be beneficial if we get your third reading tonight so you can get tax notices prepared and all that fun stuff that happens after we approve this bylaw?
We're just going to put a pause on that question only because we're bumping up against 9 o'clock. So if I do have somebody that wishes to continue this discussion, that means that we need a motion to go past 9. Councillor Span.
I'll make the motion that we go past 9 o'clock.
I'm assuming we can just do that with a show of hands as opposed to going through the trouble getting it on the machines. So I'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor? And that's none opposed. So that has carried. We will go beyond 9 o'clock. Reverting back to the question that was just asked by Councillor DeBresser, I believe CEO Gowdy was about to answer that.
Yeah, more time is always better. It's not necessary. We have the ability to make it happen with waiting for third reading, but of course, more breathing room is better as well. Pragmatically, what happens is we sort of make presumptions about third reading and then go ahead with stuff. So yes, it would give us a lot more confidence in doing that if third reading had passed, but it's not necessary.
It does just require then someone to make that motion that was very similar to the one that was in our first item under request for decision, that council resolves to consider third reading of, in this case, bylaw 534 at the same meeting as second reading would be the wording, if someone's willing to make that motion. Councillor Goings,
I move that council considers third reading of bylaw 534
at the same meeting.
at the same meeting as
Second reading.
second reading of bylaw 534. Thank you.
Very good. Oh, that was my timer. No questions on that? Oh, I see it even up on the screen here. I will go ahead and call the question then. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. Someone wishes to make motion for third reading? It's okay. Councillor Goings.
I move that council gives third reading to bylaw 534.
Very good. Do not see any further lights on. I'm going to guess there's no further comment or question. I see that it is on my screen, so I'll go ahead and call the question. Please vote. And that is passed unanimously. That does take us then to the end of our request for decision. Our next section would be notices of motion. There are two that have been brought forward, both by Councillor Span. I will just be asking if they are recorded correctly. They will not be debated this evening. They will be for a future council meeting. 7.1 reads that it be resolved that council direct administration to prepare an amending bylaw for first reading to change the cannabis retail sales in the C4 district from permitted use to the discretionary use. Is that the correct motion?
That is correct.
Very well. And that will be for consideration at the May 11th meeting. 7.2 reads, be it resolved that council will direct administration to prepare an amending bylaw for first reading to change the gas station in the C4 district from a permitted use to a discretionary use. Is that the correct wording?
That is also correct.
Very good. That will also come forward at the May 11th meeting. That does bring us to the end of our business this evening. Just to comment on our next meetings, as was already mentioned, May 11th, regular council meeting, followed by the 25th of May and June 8th. I will have we have no in-camera items, so I will have one last motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Span.
I will make the motion to adjourn.
At 9:03. I'll call the question. Please vote. Very good. That is unanimous. Thank you, everyone.